Chapter 681. Yes, sir. A few officers surrounded them again. Helene Vivian curled her lips mockingly. She turned her head and saw His Highness's face. His long, narrow eyes hid a light, and there was a thick chill in his deep, cold eyes. The two of them looked at each other, but did not resist. They strolled forward casually, allowing the officers to lead them forward. Before coming here, Helene Vivian had already informed the Minister of Personnel to keep an eye on his subordinates and personally investigate this case. Now that Lord Zhang insisted on taking them away, it was obvious that he wanted to bring them to meet the Minister of Personnel so that he could close the case as soon as possible and protect his son's safety. How stupid. Coincidentally, there were too many people here. It was not convenient for her and His Highness to do anything. Once they met Lord Li, she would take care of the Zhang family's father and son. Helene Vivian yawned and continued walking forward. Yen Lu tiptoed and kept looking in their direction. Every time her gaze fell on Beligaju, she was reluctant to part with him. This made Zhang Yu's eyes darken even more. He thought about how many times he had hinted to this Yen Lu, but she did not give him a chance. The moment this pretty boy arrived, he received such treatment. Zhang Yu was very upset. Of course, he did not really like Yen Lu that much. It was just that he liked her. Plus, he could not bring himself to do it, which made his heart itch even more. Now that he saw the bashful look on her face when she looked at Beligaju, he felt like she was slapping his own face. He was the young master of the Zhang family, which part of him was not better than that pretty boy? Zhang Yu sneered. Isn't this gigolo so likable? I'll just let him die. Just based on the fact that he dared to go against me just now, these two people deserve to be scapegoats. Lord Zhang's thoughts were even more direct. There were countless cases in the Ministry of Personnel. Even if Lord Li was personally investigating, the most important thing in this missing persons case was time. It had been 2 days since the incident. He was the officer in charge of the case. As long as he carefully moved a few clues, he would be able to move the evidence. In addition, from the way these two people were dressed, they didn't seem to have any background. Both of them were extremely poor. Even if they were used as scapegoats, they wouldn't cause any trouble. If they were obedient, when the year came, he would use the excuse of insufficient evidence to release these two people. If they didn't listen to him, like today, then he didn't need to talk about morality anymore. After all, there were so many people in the capital, so it wasn't a big deal if 1 or 2 commoners died. Lord Zhang's calculations were very good. With a criminal, he could first clear the suspicion of his beloved son, and also save him from being unable to leave the house for several days. Secondly, he could make a contribution in front of Lord Li, so why not? Zhang Yu knew what his father was thinking. Seeing that they were all on the same side, he lowered his voice and said, "Father, will Lord Li find out anything? Don't worry, no one will dare to spread rumors about you. But you, after this matter is over, you'd better behave yourself for a few days. Don't interact with those poor girls in the alleyway anymore. Father knows that you like to play, and I have never interfered in your matters. But look, that old Madame Zhang's tone just now, it's obvious that she wants to rely on you. These poor people are troublesome. They are always whimsical and greedy. They don't know what's good for them." Helene Vivian listened to the conversation between the father and son. Her suppressed eyes grew colder and colder, and the coldness emitted from them seemed to be able to kill. Lord Zhang, who was focused on warning his beloved son, didn't notice this. Instead, he adjusted the black gauze hat on his head and confidently led Helene Vivian and Beligaju into the Li estate. The Minister of Appointments, Lord Li, was in his study. Right now, his mood was like ants on a hot pan. He couldn't sit still for a moment. Other than the progress of the investigation, He couldn't forget what Wang Fei said to him in the palace. Calculating the time, His Highness and Wang Fei should have already gone to the entrance of the alley, right? None of the people he sent down came to report the news. He couldn't tell anyone that he had ordered people to keep an eye on the entrance of the alley at all times. A large part of the reason was that he had to ensure the safety of His Highness and Wang Fei. Although His Highness didn't need his protection at all. But what if something really happened to His Highness? Even if he had 9 heads, it wouldn't be enough to be chopped off. Not to mention that the retired emperor would want his life. Even his colleagues worshipped the royal family immensely after the exorcism competition. That great General Wu Jing pulled him to tell him about His Highness's achievements every day. His face was flushed with excitement, and it was comparable to a young girl seeing her sweetheart. If he knew that something had happened to His Highness in his territory, he was going to use his axe to pry up his entire mansion. The more the Minister of Appointments thought about it, the more anxious he became. He pulled the page boy and asked, "How is it? Did anyone unusual go to the entrance of the alley?" The page boy looked at his collar that was being pulled up. "Master, you've asked this question 7 or 8 times." In just a short 2 hours, he had run until his legs were about to break. "So is it true or not?" The Minister of Appointments was originally a very gentle person, but today, he looked exceptionally irritable. "No." The page boy shook his head. The errand boy shook his head. Then he remembered that he came in because he had something else to report. He said respectfully, "Master, Lord Zhang wants to see you. He said that he has evidence and caught the criminal. He is in the front hall now." When the Minister of Appointments heard that the criminal was caught, his eyes immediately lit up. There was finally a smile on his face, and he strode toward the front hall. At this moment, Lord Zhang was sitting on a wooden chair with a cup of tea in his hand. He had a draft in his mind. He wanted to perform well when he met Lord Li later so that he could use this opportunity to be promoted again. Zhang Yu sat next to him. He did not look like a dog who bullied others at the entrance of the alley at all. Instead, he was well behaved. He looked left and right and sighed. As expected of the Minister of Appointments' residence. His family did not lack money, but the residence of a high-ranking official was big, and the residence of a low-ranking official was small. He knew a few of the young masters in the capital, but most of them were of the same rank as his father, or slightly higher than his father. Their residences were about the same, but this was the first time he had seen such a large residence like the Li residence. While Zhang Yu was thinking, he saw a person briskly walk in from outside. He was still wearing the official's robes that he had not changed out of. Lord Zhang immediately stood up and bowed. Zhang Yu stood up as well and bowed. Lord Li, the Minister of Appointments, waved his hand. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. "There's no need for formalities. Lord Zhang, I heard that you caught the criminal involved in the disappearance at the entrance of the alley. Where is the criminal? Where is he?" Chapter 682. When Lord Zhang saw how excited the minister was, he knew that he had placed the right bet. He immediately said, "They're outside. I'll get someone to bring them in now." As he spoke, Lord Zhang glanced at the officers beside him. "Hurry up and bring the criminals in." The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs was delighted when he saw that there was a clue to the case. "Lord Zhang, how did you catch the criminals?" "I've been troubled by this case for the past 2 days." Lord Zhang had the intention of recommending his beloved son to the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs. He patted Zhang Yu's shoulder and said, "It's all thanks to my second son. He's been smart since he was young. This time, we were able to catch the criminals because he noticed something suspicious. That's why I was able to catch them." "Oh." The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs looked at Zhang Yu and praised him politely. "What a young talent. Zhang Yu was flattered by the praise. Although he said that he was flattered, the smile on his face grew brighter. This time, it was a blessing in disguise. He found 2 scapegoats. Perhaps his career would be promoted as well. After all, even the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs was praising him. Lord Li didn't care about the Zhang family's father and son. His mind was filled with the fact that the case was solved. He could finally answer to His Highness and the Princess Consort. Just as the Minister of the Ministry of Appointments was thinking about these things with his head lowered, the officer who had just left came back in with 2 people. The 2 people had long iron chains on their hands, but this did not affect their temperament at all. They were indifferent, and did not look like criminals who had been detained at all. Lord Zhang stepped forward and reminded the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs, "Lord Li, the criminals are here." The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Personnel pulled himself out of his thoughts and raised his head to look at the wooden door. It was fine if he didn't look, but when he saw the 2 people's faces and figures, the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs jumped up from his wooden chair. His eyes widened, and he coughed out the tea he drank because of the violent reaction. "Your Highness." Before the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs could say, "Your Highness," he suddenly remembered the 3rd Princess Consort's order. He swallowed the rest of his words and looked at the cold chains in fear. There was only one thought in his mind. "Fuck, if that Zhang guy wants to die, then he can die by himself. He even wants to drag me along. Does he know what stupid thing he did? He actually kidnapped the royal family. He even brought her to the Li residence." At this moment, the Minister of Personnel only wanted to cry. His eyes stared at Beligaju's perfect side profile as he screamed in his heart, "Your Highness, this old subject is innocent. You have to believe in this old subject's loyalty." Helene Vivian wanted to laugh as she watched from the side. She opened her mouth and said, "Lord Li, we were wrongly accused." The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs finally found his voice. He nodded heavily at Helene Vivian and said, "I believe you." Helene Vivian cleared her throat and reminded him to pay attention to his attitude. No official would behave like this when he saw a suspect. The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs didn't want to, but when he saw His Highness's face, his legs couldn't help but go weak. The Zhang father and son also noticed the Secretary of State's strange behavior and raised their eyebrows. "Lord Li." The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs forced himself to calm down and turned his head. This way, he couldn't see His Highness's eyes. He finally regained his confidence and said to the Zhang father and son, "Lord Zhang, the most important thing when investigating a case is evidence. How can you arrest people without evidence? They even arrested the King of Hell. They must be tired of living." When Lord Zhang heard his question, he replied calmly, "I'm still investigating the other evidence, but the whereabouts of these 2 people are really suspicious. All the missing people in the alley have the same characteristics as unmarried girls. So far, the only girl left in the alley is the daughter of the Yen family. These 2 people pretended to be feng shui masters and went to the Yen family as soon as they arrived at the alley. It's obvious that these 2 people are definitely related to the case." The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs took a deep breath and tried his best to suppress the urge to drag Lord Zhang over and shake him. "His Highness and the Princess Consort went to investigate the case, you stupid pig." Helene Wei, however, smiled disapprovingly. "Lord Zhang, the common characteristics of all the missing persons in the alley case is not only that they are all unmarried young girls, but also that each of these young girls is inextricably linked to your son. Why didn't you tell Lord Li about this?" "What?" The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs looked at the Zhang father and son, his eyes darkening. "Lord Zhang, shouldn't you explain to me the relationship between your son and the missing people?" Cold sweat broke out on Lord Zhang's palms, but he remained calm. Lord Chin, I thought this was nothing. After all, it's not a secret in the alley, so I didn't report it to you. Since you want to hear it, I'll tell you everything. My son has been popular with women since he was young. I don't mean to belittle the commoners, but the girls in the alley were too bold. Every time they saw you, they would come up to him and say a few words. Some even secretly sent a servant to send a letter to you, You, is young after all, so he couldn't control himself. It's just a normal relationship, but now it's being used against him. Speaking of which, it's all because those girls were too indecent. They came out so late at night and met with mishap in the end. What does it have to do with you, Hellion Vivian hated this kind of man the most. Everyone knew that the cause of this incident was second young Master Zhang's flirtatious behavior. If he hadn't wantonly seduced the girls, none of these things would have happened. Now that he was talking about it, he wanted to throw all the dirty water on the girls. What a jerk. Since Lord Zhang won't let go of the fact that the missing people went out late at night, then I'd like to ask young Master Zhang, why did your lovers come out late at night? Hellion Vivian looked at Zhang Yu with shining eyes. It's because of you, right? You were the one who asked them to come out late that night for a rendezvous with you, right? Zhang Yu's body froze. He didn't expect the other party to know about this. Ling was the first to go missing. Her mother also said that she never came back after meeting you that night. Hellion Vivian smiled faintly. Let me guess. You didn't want to see her at that time, right? Zhang Yu's face suddenly turned pale because she guessed right. Don't talk nonsense. No one knew about this, not even old Madame Zhang. He had intended to dump Zhang Ling long ago. How did this brat who came out of nowhere know? Chapter 683. The reason why you didn't want to see Zhang Ling, is very simple. You were busy with other girls at that time. Hellion Vivian acted as if she didn't see Zhang Yu's expression and continued speaking calmly. You felt that Zhang Ling, was a burden to you because she was too whimsical. You thought it was just a game to you, but you didn't expect her to want to marry you so badly that she even tried to ruin your meeting with other girls. To Hellion Vivian, these were just normal deductions. She didn't listen to the quarrel quietly at the entrance of the alley for nothing. She collected information, sorted out the clues, and deduced the truth. The Minister of Personnel had already seen Hellion Vivian's meticulous deductions. Now that he heard Hellion Vivian's words, he couldn't help but admire her to the extreme. Zhang Yu looked at Hellion Vivian as if he had seen a ghost. This person even knew what he was thinking. You didn't want to see her, but you went that day because you wanted to put an end to this relationship. Hellion Vivian lowered her clear eyes as if she could see through everything. Someone at the entrance of the alley said that there was a couple arguing that day. The night watchman also heard the commotion. Actually, it wasn't a couple arguing, but you and Zhang Ling, You warned her to stop pestering you, but she couldn't accept it. She even broke off the engagement because of you, but you dumped her just like that. How could there be such a good thing? That's why it sounded like a couple arguing. Zhang Yu clenched his fists and his heart trembled, but his face was full of disdain. You're a good storyteller, but after all that, where's the evidence? I don't want to argue with you commoners. You want to push the blame to me because you're suspicious. Do you think the Ministry of Personnel's judicial system is just for show? It seems that I guessed correctly. Hellion Vivian studied his expression and suddenly smiled. Zhang Yu narrowed his eyes and lowered his voice so that only the two of them could hear. I know you don't have any evidence, but I advise you to be sensible. That way, I can spare your life. Otherwise, the Zhang family is not to be trifled with. Oh. Hellion Vivian smirked playfully and looked at Zhang Yu. Time is limited, so I can't be bothered to look for evidence. Since young Master Zhang likes to use his status to oppress others, I won't hold back. As she spoke, she looked at the secretary of the Ministry of Personnel. Her lips curled into a smile, but her eyes were cold. Lord Li, drag Zhang Yu out and give him 100 beatings. If he doesn't confess, continue until he does. Zhang Yu snorted. Who do you think you are? Do you think Lord Li will listen to your one-sided story? To his surprise, the Minister of Appointments bowed respectfully to the person in front of him and said, Yes, Wang Fei. Wang Fei. Zhang Yu swallowed the rest of his words. She turned around and looked at Hellion Vivian in disbelief. Even the astute Lord Zhang was so shocked by the way the Minister of Personnel addressed him that his face turned pale. This person was the Princess Consort. Then, the other one, Bailey Jia Ju, did not speak from the beginning to the end. It was only until now that he slowly opened his mouth. His voice was still very pleasant to hear. 100 planks is too light. Just cut off his thing down there. It will also teach Lord Zhang a lesson. When Lord Zhang heard that, he knelt on the ground with a thud. He had never seen the royal family, but he had heard of the royal family's methods. This was clearly what that person liked to play with. And he had actually kidnapped the current crown prince of the imperial court. He even wanted to use him as a scapegoat for his son. The more Lord Zhang thought about it, the more scared he became. His entire body trembled in fear and he kowtowed again and again. The sound was so loud that it made one's head hurt. This official has eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I have offended your highness. Please spare my life. Lord Zhang, who was extremely proud of himself just now, was now stuttering and trembling. Zhang Yu retreated in fear. A man in black appeared out of nowhere and pressed down on his leg. The gleam of the knife in his hand was so obvious. I'll tell you everything. Zhang Yu wailed and struggled. His face was full of tears. Even his pants were wet. Clearly, he was scared out of his wits. Hellion Vivian couldn't help but admire His Highness' methods. He was much more ruthless than her. He even thought of taking someone's manhood. It was just that this scene was too disgusting. Hellion Vivian looked at Zhang Yu and reached out to cover her nose. Beligaju glanced at the shadow guard in black. The shadow guard immediately stopped moving. The knife flashed and retreated, as if it had never appeared. Zhang Yu crawled on the ground and kowtowed heavily a few times. Your Highness, the disappearance at the entrance of the alley really has nothing to do with me. I did go to the entrance of the alley that day, but after quarreling with Zhongling, I left. She wouldn't let go of me. I didn't want to have anything to do with her, so why would I kidnap her? And the other two people, I don't know why they suddenly disappeared. They were fine when I saw them, Zhang Yu was obviously a little incoherent. In fact, when they were at the entrance of the alley, Hellion Vivian had already ruled out the possibility that Zhang Yu was the culprit. Because these women were just for him to pass the time. Even if he didn't like them, he could just send them away with money or use his status to pressure them. He wouldn't kidnap them. Hellion Vivian followed him back because he might have seen the culprit, but he didn't remember. Hellion Vivian's idea came from Granny Zhang's words. Since Zhongling disappeared after meeting Zhang Yu, that meant that the culprit was also there that night. It was the same for the other two girls. After their rendezvous with Zhang Yu, they must have met someone else on their way home. Zhang Yu, since you say you're innocent, then think about it. When you met Zhongling, and the others, did you feel anything strange? Or did you see anyone? Hellion Vivian's voice was calm. That counts as an acquaintance from the alley. Zhang Yu racked his brain. I didn't see anyone else, but on the day I met Zhongling, there was something weird. I felt like something was watching Zhongling, but Zhongling didn't notice it at all. Plus, I saw a strange shadow that day. What do you mean? Helene Vivian's eyes lit up, and she immediately caught the main point in Zhang Yu's words. Zhang Yu described it abstractly. The shadow was a little short, and even its back was bulging. If it wasn't walking behind me, I wouldn't have known it was a person. Its back was bulging. Helene Vivian's brows furrowed. She seemed to be thinking about something, and her fingers tapped on her long legs. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. I think I know who the culprit is. Ah. This time, Zhang Yu was stunned. He forgot to close his mouth. He only mentioned a shadow, and she only knew who the culprit was. The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs was also puzzled. He turned his head and whispered to Helene Wei, Princess Consort, why do I feel that this shadow was pulled out by Ghost Zhang? Who would have such a bulging back? The back doesn't really bulge into a lump. It's just that in the dark, if a hunchbacked person is hit by the shadow, it will look like a lump. Helene Wei's voice was very faint. However, the Minister of Personnel knew that it wasn't that easy to think of this. One must have an extremely fast mind. Involuntarily, the Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs looked at Helene Wei with even more admiration. He said in an impassioned voice, I will order people to write a notice now, all hunchbacked men are to be arrested in the city. No need. Helene Wei turned around, her gaze slowly falling on the Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs. Because the prisoner is not a man. Not a man. The Minister of Personnel's eyes widened. How is that possible? They had been investigating for more than 3 days. From the beginning, they had targeted the culprit as a man. After all, the missing people were all young girls. Why did the Princess Consort say that the culprit wasn't a man? Did they investigate wrongly? Helene Vivian's voice was still very calm. Nothing is impossible. Because when a person is young, most of them will have a hunchback when they walk. Princess Consort, you mean that the culprit is an old man? The Minister of Personnel felt that this conclusion was too unbelievable. How can an old man be so nimble and not leave any traces after kidnapping someone? Helene Vivian smiled. What's wrong with an old man? The more harmless a person is, the lower the guard of the missing people. I had been wondering why the missing people didn't call for help. Now, I finally figured it out. There were 2 reasons why they didn't call for help. One was that the person was someone they were very familiar with, and the second was the process of how they were kidnapped. The entrance of the alley was small, so the slightest noise could be heard. However, when the 3 of them disappeared, other than Zhongling, and Zhang Yu who had quarreled, the other 2 simply disappeared without a trace. This was very unusual. So I calculated what happened after Zhang Yu left. Under normal circumstances, the darker the night, the more familiar people are with the paths they are familiar with. From the entrance of the alley to the house of the missing people, there is a small path that only the people on that street know. During this time, they will walk very quickly because women will subconsciously increase their speed when walking alone at night. They will also develop a corresponding vigilance. Even if there is no one behind them, they will feel that something is wrong. Moreover, there was danger at that time. That's even stranger. Since they were on guard, why didn't they call for help? Even if it was someone they were very familiar with, they should have subconsciously called out. After all, the Minister of Personnel had handled so many cases, he still felt that something was strange. Helene Vivian looked at him and said, because that person didn't appear behind them, but in front of them. It would be best if he stood in front of their house and came out to sprinkle some water. Everything would look natural and normal. Not only would it not make them call for help, it would lower their guard and let them naturally approach him. Then, when they are not prepared, he would use a prepared handkerchief to cover them and drag them to his own courtyard. Everything would be done without anyone knowing and would not waste any time. This official doesn't understand. Princess Consort, are you saying that the culprit already knew that they were coming back? Wait. Standing in front of their house. The Minister of Personnel's eyes widened. The culprit lives in the alley. Yes. Helian Wei Wei smiled slowly. Besides, it's not difficult to find out when the missing person will return. After all, they all live in the same alley. Moreover, Zhang Yu and the missing person's rendezvous time is fixed. As long as we arrange everything in advance and wait for the missing person to walk right into the trap, even if the authorities investigate, they won't be able to trace it back to her. Besides being harmless, she has Zhang Yu, who looks like a criminal, in front of her. In order to protect his son, Lord Zhang will definitely not report the truth of the situation at the entrance of the alley to his superiors. Unless the higher-ups really want to investigate. However, she is not afraid of being investigated because she knows that even if she doesn't say it herself, the neighbors will reveal Zhang Yu's matter. The most suitable person to be a culprit is still Zhang Yu. She only needs to be a bystander and can enjoy the fruits of others' labor. This way, not only can she get rid of the girls she hates, she can also make Zhang Yu suffer. The more the Minister of Personnel listened, the more shocked he became. This is too thorough. Not only was it thorough, it was extremely vicious. If it was not for the princess, this case would have become an unjust case. No matter how thorough it is, there will be flaws. Unexpectedly, Beligaju, who had not spoken since the beginning, actually spoke. His sexy and good-looking thin lips curved slightly with mockery. Moreover, it is such an obvious cause and effect relationship. The Minister of Personnel listened with a blank expression. That's right. All of this is just a personal grudge. Helian Vivian laughed and glanced at Zhang Yu, who was kneeling on the ground. A playboy with no moral principles has caused such a big trouble. Even the path of reincarnation was almost locked up because of this matter. No matter how I look at it, I don't like it. Forget it, let's continue to let the shadow guards castrate him. Just as Helian Vivian finished speaking, Zhang Yu felt his leg being lifted again. With a flash of a knife, the immense pain spread from his lower limbs to his entire body. He did not even have the chance to cry for mercy before he fainted from the pain. Lord Zhang rushed over and hugged his beloved son's head. Why? Didn't the princess say that the culprit is not my son? He is indeed not a culprit, but the cause of all this is because he stole someone else's fiancé. Helian Vivian's expression did not change at all. Lord Zhang should know your son's actions better than I do. These 3 times, the girls were willing and unwilling. Some of them were toyed with by him. Lord Zhang, you have protected your son for too long. In the future, you should be careful when you walk at night. Who knows, someone might come to seek revenge. Chapter 684. When Lord Zhang heard Helian Vivian's words, he felt a chill run down his spine. He had never felt this way before. It was as if in front of this person, all the dirty things he had done could not be stopped. The minister of the Ministry of Appointments was not clear about the cause and effect, but he vaguely felt that the matter was related to the fiancé. He hurriedly asked Helian Vivian, Princess, you mean that the other party is holding a grudge because his fiancé was stolen, so he prepared this series of revenge? No, to be precise, it's because my beloved son's fiancé was snatched away. As a mother who wants to make decisions for her son in everything and thinks that her son is the most perfect in the world, I really can't accept it. Why would these girls rather be together with a playboy than with her own son? Helian Vivian rubbed her fingers and curled her lips into a smile, thinking too highly of your own son is also a kind of illness. The minister of the Ministry of Appointments was stunned because he had never heard of such a theory before. However, Lord Zhang seemed to have been shocked by something. Old Lady Wang. The culprit is Old Lady Wang. You're not that stupid. Helene Vivian smiled, but her eyes were cold. Such a smart person, but he can't be an official. He might as well not be. Lord Zhang turned his head abruptly. Princess, you can't. Helene Vivian did not listen to him. Instead, she looked sideways at Beligaju and said in a lazy voice, he said that I can't dismiss him. The minister of the Ministry of Appointments looked left and right. According to the ancestral rules, a woman in the harem could not interfere with the dismissal of an official. In the past, His Highness hated Empress Murong the most when she wanted to insert people into the Ministry of Appointments. He slapped Empress Murong's face in front of her face and scolded her miserably. Now that the princess was doing this, she should be violating His Highness's taboo. However, Bailey Jia Ju only smiled playfully for a moment. He held Helene Wei Wei's hand and squeezed it back and forth. Then, he leisurely said, Shadow, didn't you hear what the Princess Consort said? Take off his crown plume and throw him out. Yes. The shadow guard appeared very quickly and moved one of his hands. The black gauze hat on Lord Zhang's head was gone, and his hair was disheveled. The father and son were thrown out of the Li residence together. There were not many people in the Li residence. After all, it was already late at night. However, the people who passed by would still glance at them and whisper. Helene Vivian was very indifferent. An official is like this, and he wants to use the ancestral system to suppress me. Do you think I'm so easy to suppress? Yes. Beligaju was still squeezing the claws in his hand. His voice was so low that only the two of them could hear it. You are indeed not easy to be pinned down. Because compared to the bottom, you seem to prefer sitting on my waist, right? Helene Vivian was at a loss for words as her ears turned red. I was right. Beligaju sometimes likes to see her embarrassed appearance. He lowers his head and kisses the tip of her ear. His eyes are full of tenderness. Helene Vivian rubbed her ear and murmured, There's still someone here. Is there? Beligaju raised his eyes and looked at the Minister of Personnel. No, no. Actually, this official doesn't even exist. The Minister of Personnel immediately covered his eyes and turned to leave. These days, officials need to be discerning. Helene Vivian looked at the Minister of Personnel's nagging back and smiled. None of the people around you are not afraid of you. Beligaju did not comment and hugged her tightly. He smiled faintly. Is it that funny? Helene Vivian did not speak. She nestled in his arms and continued to laugh. The Minister of Personnel's posture when he left was too funny. The Minister of Personnel is already so old, but he still has to play along with His Highness's bad humor. How sad, ha ha ha. You're still laughing. Beligaju reached out and gently pinched Helene Vivian's chin. As he breathed, his sexy voice was like a seductive hook. Do you believe that if you continue to laugh, I will press down on you right now? Helene Vivian immediately stopped laughing. She strongly believed that His Highness was someone who did not care about the situation, environment, or location. He was someone who would do whatever he wanted. Think about it carefully. We have never done it in such a pressurizing place. As Beligaju spoke, his left hand reached into her clothes and skillfully rubbed it. He seemed to be deep in thought. Helene Vivian thought that he was thinking about something important. Unexpectedly, his next sentence was, Let's try it when we get back. Helene Vivian. Can you not use such a serious tone and say such indecent things? Let's catch her first. Helene Vivian pushed him away and smiled faintly as she kissed his flawless face. That old lady Wang is probably not human anymore. It's just a case of missing persons. It's impossible for her to create so many resentful evil spirits. Something must have happened to her. We have to understand it clearly. Moreover, I have a feeling that she has unfinished business. It was night and the fog outside was getting thicker. Ever since she saw the two young masters being caught, Yenlu's heart was filled with guilt. She knew that she could not go out at this time, but she still wanted to go to the yamen to take a look. After all, the two young masters were caught by young Master Zhang because she called them a feng shui master. She had to think of a way to help them. When Yenlu thought of this, she could not sit still anymore. She put on a cotton-padded jacket and walked out. Lu's mother and father were still in the other room. They were talking about the strange things that happened these few days, so they did not notice the commotion outside. In addition, it was snowing heavily at night. The northern wind blew loudly, causing the wooden door to creak. It was more convenient for Yenlu to go out. It was already late, there were not many people in the long alley. However, every house was lit up. Yenlu hugged the cotton-padded jacket tightly and walked forward with her head down. She walked very quickly, turning left and entering the narrow alley. In the beginning, Yenlu did not think much of it. She only wanted to reach the yamen as soon as possible. Later on, she felt like something was watching her from behind. That feeling made her subconsciously feel a chill run down her back. She did not dare to turn around and felt a wave of regret. She should not have come out at this time. Someone must be following her. With that thought in mind, Yenlu walked even faster as if she was running away from something. However, she did not know that there was nothing behind her. It was all just her imagination. Right at this moment, a wooden door to her left opened. It was old Lady Wang's house. Yenlu thought that she would be safe once she reached that place. Chapter 685. Why did you come out at this time? Old Lady Wang's silhouette was hidden in the darkness. She was holding a wooden basin in her hand, looking like she was going out to sprinkle some water. Yenlu grabbed old Lady Wang's arm and made a shushing gesture. She then said softly while panting, I think someone or something is chasing me from behind. Then come in quickly and hide for a while, old Lady Wang said calmly as she followed Yenlu's lead and pulled her into the doorframe. Yenlu did not suspect anything. She immediately strode into the room and even closed the door behind her. She leaned against the door and panted, feeling a lingering fear in her heart. That was too dangerous. Luckily you appeared in time, Granny. Old Lady Wang shook her head and continued to stand in the dark. Her voice was a little slow as she said, I think the people outside won't be able to leave for a while. Come in with me first. I'll ask Ling to send you back later. Then I'll have to trouble you, Granny. Yenlu was scared out of her wits, her forehead was covered in a thin layer of sweat. She followed old Lady Wang into the courtyard. She did not know if it was because of the sweat, but she felt cold all around. It was the same when she entered the house. All of the Wang family's savings were used for her son's education. Old Lady Wang was a widow, she was very thrifty and did not light any charcoal. Yenlu rubbed her arms. Only then did she realize that old Lady Wang was only wearing a single layer of clothing in the middle of winter. Was she not afraid of the cold? Have some tea, a slightly heavy voice came from above Yenlu's head. Yenlu shivered from the cold. She wanted to warm her hands with the teacup, but when she took it, she realized that the water in the cup was cold. That was strange. Maybe old Lady Wang was reluctant to boil the water. Yenlu held the teacup and thought for a while. She really could not drink cold tea. Even the breath in the middle of winter was cold, who would drink cold tea? What she did not expect was that old lady Wang actually drank it. Moreover, she drank it very naturally, as if the temperature of the water did not matter to her. The atmosphere was stagnant for a moment. Old lady Wang was sitting on her exclusive rocking chair. Her eyes were fixed on Yen Lu, but there was no expression on her face. For some reason, Yen Lu felt an inexplicable sense of awkwardness. Perhaps it was because she had yet to recover from the shock earlier. She was afraid of everything she saw. The quieter the room was, the greater the fear. Yen Lu had no choice but to find something to talk about. Old lady Wang, I have some charcoal in my house that I don't have any use for. I'll send it over to you tomorrow. Also, if you don't mind, I'll bring them over for you. Old lady Wang did not respond. Just when Yen Lu thought that she had fallen asleep, a voice rang out. Only then did old lady Wang's hoarse voice reach them. You're the kindest person in this alley. You don't mind the poor, nor do you love the rich. You even take such good care of us, mother and son. Lu, whoever marries you will be very lucky. I'm not as good as Granny says. Yen Lu smiled shyly. Granny always helps me out. We live in the same alley, that's what I should do. If it were anyone else, they would do the same. Old lady Wang snorted coldly. They won't do that. The two girls from the Zhang family and the Li family always mock and ridicule Ling whenever they see her. They even said that Ling will never amount to anything in her life. What do they know? Ling will be the top scorer one day, it's just not time yet. I guess they're just anxious. Don't take it to heart, Granny. Yen Lu's words were a little awkward. Old lady Wang's voice was calm. You don't have to speak for them. Each one of them is more immoral than the other. Going out to meet someone in the middle of the night. If I had a daughter like that, I'd strangle them to death. They're an embarrassment to our ancestors. To be honest, Yen Lu was not good at talking to others about such things. She only said softly, Granny, I'm not speaking for them. Some of what they said is true. Look at Brother Ling, he's old now. I can't let Granny go out and work. It's good to do some work after studying. Your brother Ling's hands are going to be used to write memorials to the emperor. How can he work for someone else? Old lady Wang's voice suddenly became louder. It sounded a little creepy in the middle of the night. Yen Lu was shocked. She quickly said, Granny Wang, that's not what I meant. That's enough. Old lady Wang interrupted her. You're still young. You don't know much about this. There are very few people in our alley who know how to write. Your brother Ling is the first. People like him should go higher. Yen Lu smiled awkwardly. You're right, Granny Wang. Then, she looked at the sky outside. That person should be leaving soon. I'll go out and take a look. There's no rush. Old lady Wang had no intention of standing up. She took another sip of tea. Since you're here today, Granny has something to tell you. Yen Lu smiled and asked, what is it? Granny, just say it. Lu, I watched you grow up. You've been close to your brother Ling since you were young. Initially, I didn't want to marry the Zhang family's daughter. After all, the marriage between the two families was set by your uncle Wang when he was alive. Now that the marriage is not going to happen and your brother Ling is free, Granny wants to ask you, are you willing to be my Wang family's daughter-in-law? There was finally a hint of a smile in old lady Wang's tone. However, the person who heard it paled. Yen Lu did not expect old lady Wang to ask her such a thing. She did not know how to answer. Mainly because she had no feelings for Wang Ling. Moreover, Wang Ling was 8 years older than her. Why? don't you find it too surprising? Old Lady Wang continued smiling. Although you haven't been to school, you've always been gentle. With someone like you serving your brother Ling, Granny can rest assured. Don't worry, even if your brother Ling becomes successful one day and becomes a high-ranking official, there will be a place for you in his mansion. He's always been a kind person, he won't mistreat his wife. The more Yen Lu listened, the more she felt that she had to say something. Granny, it's not what you think. My feelings for brother Ling. I've always treated him as my brother. The two of us can't do it. All of a sudden, the temperature in the room dropped to the freezing point. Yen Lu could clearly feel that the old lady on the rocking chair had stopped smiling. Her voice was low and slightly sinister. You mean, you're not willing to marry your brother Ling? Yen Lu wanted old lady Wang to listen to her explanation, so she walked closer. Once she was closer, she noticed the strangeness of old lady Wang's fingers under the candlelight. They were long and black, hidden under her tattered sleeves. It was so abnormal that it was frightening. Chapter 686. Shocked, Yen Lu was caught off guard and the teacup in her hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Of course, the noise attracted old lady Wang's attention. She lifted her head slowly and looked at Yen Lu's face. She then smiled eerily. You saw everything, didn't you? Yen Lu pretended to be calm but could not hide the fear in her eyes. She tried to look normal. What are you talking about, Granny? You saw everything. Hee, I'll take my leave first. I'll think about what you said when I get back. As she spoke, Yen Lu turned to leave but the wooden door would not open no matter how hard she tried. Yen Lu panicked and sped up her movements like a rat running for its life. The old voice that sounded like a dead person was getting closer. Lu, you've really disappointed me. I didn't expect you to be the same as those girls, despising the poor and loving the rich. No matter how good your appearance is, you're only interested in those external conditions. This time, Yen Lu did not answer old lady Wang. She shook the wooden door with all her might, only thinking of escaping from this terrifying place. She tried to call for help, but she felt a burst of weakness in her body. Her voice was also very weak. It was the cup of tea she had just drunk. Something was spiked in that cup of tea. Yen Lu slid down the wooden door and fell to the ground. Her fingers could not exert any strength and only her consciousness remained. She watched as old lady Wang's face that was full of dead spots came closer and closer. Her body shrunk inwards desperately. Old lady Wang slowly raised her arm. At that moment, a man dressed like a scholar suddenly stood in front of Yen Lu, blocking her way. He looked at old lady Wang with pleading eyes. Mother, you know that Lu, is not that kind of person. She probably hasn't thought it through yet. Please give her some time to think about it. Brother Ling. Yen Lu felt that she had finally met a normal person. She grabbed Wang Ling's arm as if asking for help and asked softly, "What's wrong with Granny?" Her hand and those things on her face. Wang Ling did not know how to answer Yen Lu. He only shook his head. Yen Lu was so anxious that her face turned pale. She continued, "Brother Ling, I know you've always listened to Granny," but old lady Wang did not hear Yen Lu's words. She only glanced at Wang Ling, looking very displeased. However, he finally stopped his action of pinching her, and his eyes darkened. "Ling, you're good at everything, but you're not ruthless enough." Old lady Wang laughed coldly and said to Yen Lu, "Forget it, by right, a girl like you has no right to be Ah Ling's wife, but Ah Ling likes you. Moreover, I don't have much time left, you don't have to go home and think about it. Tonight is an auspicious day, Ah Ling, go and bring the 2 sets of wedding clothes that I've sewn, one for yourself and the other for Lu. Seeing how she's always taken care of me, if she's obedient and gets married, we'll be a family in the future. Wang Ling did not move, as if he was hesitating. Yen Lu grabbed his sleeve. Brother Ling, please let me go back. Getting married is not a small matter after all. Now that Granny is in trouble, you can't follow suit, Brother Ling. Lu, Wang Ling opened his mouth to interrupt her, and held Yen Lu's hand, looking anxious. Actually, I've liked you since the last time you sent the quilted jacket over. You were close to me when we were young, I know you have feelings for me too, right? You don't have to care about what others say, although I have nothing now, but one day, I'll become a big official and show them. Just treat it as fulfilling one of my mother's wishes, we'll go through the wedding ceremony tonight. Yen Lu widened her eyes, looking at Wang Ling as if he was crazy. Brother Ling, you know that I don't have that kind of feelings for you. As if hurt by Yen Lu's reaction, Wang Ling's eyes dimmed, but he refused to give up. He reached out to hug her. Feelings can be cultivated, Lu. Yen Lu felt disgusted, and reached out to separate him. Brother Ling, after so many years of studying, have you only learned how to force people? Wang Ling was an honest man after all, other than imagining everything to be perfect, he did not have any bad intentions. However, to be honest, not many girls would be willing to marry a man like him. He did nothing but study all day long, he was ambitious but not hardworking enough. Moreover, he was well taken care of by old lady Wang, he did not know what hard work was. However, Yen Lu's words did make him restrain himself. He stood aside and did not do anything else. His intention of coming out was to protect Yen Lu, but he could not understand why Lu would reject him, so he could not help but feel disappointed and angry. Old lady Wang's face turned abnormally scary because of Yen Lu's words. Ling, don't waste your time with this woman, hurry up and bring the wedding dress over, and get married quickly. Those 2 people today were not normal, they even disguised themselves as feng shui masters and went to the Yen family. I suspect that they were originally from the government, but their methods were much better than the government's, and they were smart too. Just to be safe, after you get married today, I'll leave tomorrow, so that they won't come back to find out anything can affect you. I don't have many wishes in this life, as long as I can see you get married, I'll leave in peace. Towards the end of her speech, old lady Wang's voice softened, and she seemed to be in a good mood. Coincidentally, today is a good day for you to get married. Lu, I advise you to cooperate. Otherwise, these people will end up like you. As she spoke, she pulled the curtain behind her. 3 corpses were hung on the beam, all of them pale, their faces frighteningly familiar. Yen Lu took a heavy step back in fear, the strength that she had gathered with much difficulty seemed to have been used up all at once. Her pupils shook violently due to fear, even her breathing became hurried and nervous. She would never have thought that the culprit behind the recent disappearances would be old lady Wang, who lived next to her house. Yen Lu felt as if her entire heart was being squeezed by something, it was sinking with all its might, it was terrifyingly cold. She still had a chance to escape earlier, but now that she knew everything, she had nowhere to run. Even Wang Ling would not let her go, unless they became a family. Her blood had reversed to a certain point, Yen Lu was only left with fear, she did not even know when a crimson wedding dress was draped over her. Chapter 687. The color of the wedding dress was too dark and had an indescribable color. It looked a little like blood, it was horrifying. First bow to the heavens and earth. Old lady Wang sat on the rocking chair and played the role of a matchmaker. However, it was not a beautiful scene because her face was starting to turn green. It was better when she did not smile, but when she did, it made people feel even more sinister. Yen Lu did not want to bend down, she was trembling when she knelt on the ground. Wang Ling thought about it and apologized. He then held Yen Lu's neck and said, Lu, believe me, there's nothing wrong with marrying me. Yen Lu shook her head, tears flowing down her cheeks. No, Wang Ling could not bear to see her like this, but he gritted his teeth and pressed his hand down. Once a woman was married and lost her chastity, she would be loyal to him. He really liked Lu. The thought of Lu becoming his wife filled him with excitement. Let's do it this way, I'll take this opportunity to make her marry me. Yen Lu was still struggling. The people in the courtyard did not notice that the courtyard was surrounded. They were all first-class officers, each of them walked very lightly. After the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs finished setting up the scene, he said to Helene Vivian, I've followed your instructions and got them to lie in ambush. All of them are holding the dog blood red rope in their hands. All of them know light body technique, so we did not alert the enemy. Should we rush in quickly and kill her when she's unprepared? Helene Vivian looked at the wooden door and thought about it. She shook her head in the end. No. Why? The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs did not understand. Was there something that he did not do well enough? Helene Vivian stroked the large black dog that was as tall as her. She said slowly, because I'm not sure if the person in her hands is dead or alive. We can't sneak in or attack. If she has a hostage, we'll be in a passive position. The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs could not help but admire Helene Vivian's thinking. At this point, the Princess Consort was still so thoughtful. You guys lie in ambush. Helene Vivian commanded with a clear mind, no matter what rushes out later, don't touch it directly. Hold the dog blood red rope in your hands tightly. Don't leave your position. Yes. The officers replied in a low voice. Helene Vivian turned to look at the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs. Surly, the people at the front door, retreat to the left and right and hide yourselves. Her Highness and I will knock on the door. This official will also follow His Highness and Princess Consort. This official is really worried about you guys going in. Seeing how Wang Fei was capturing people, even using the dog blood red rope, they were definitely going to deal with something evil. How could he let Wang Fei and His Highness go in without a guard? What if something happened? If he followed them in, he would be able to ward off the disaster. The Minister of Personnel's gaze was especially sincere. Beligaju glanced back at him. The Minister of Personnel Affairs immediately said, Your Highness, this official's 8 characters are heavy. Since young, those dirty things have been circling around this official. This official, you have a big belly. One look and I can tell that you are an official. Beligaju slowly interrupted his subordinate. The officers almost laughed out loud, but it was obvious from their facial expressions that they were having a hard time holding back their laughter. The Minister of Personnel Affairs was speechless. Was his belly very big? All right, it was a little big. But Your Highness, do you have to say it out loud? The Minister of Personnel Affairs, who cared a lot about his appearance, looked around warningly. He could not withstand His Highness's poisonous tongue and automatically gave up on the idea of entering the courtyard. He stuck to the corner of the wall and prepared to ambush. But his belly was too big. Even if he stuck to the wall, one could still see the outline. The officers could only work to the left and right to let him suck in his stomach. When everything was in place, Helene Vivian reached out and gently knocked on the wooden door of the Wang family. Bang, bang. Instantly. Wang Ling, who was about to bow to his parents, froze and looked at old lady Wang abruptly. Mother. Why are you panicking? It's just someone knocking on the door. Old lady Wang frowned, but compared to Wang Ling, she was much calmer. This was because she knew that even if there was an investigation, that damned brat from the Zhang family would stand in front of her. She had nothing to be afraid of. Unlike Madame Wang and her son, Yan Lu Er's face finally showed a look of desire after going through a period of despair. She opened her mouth, wanting to make some noise, even if it was just a little noise. Old Lady Wang looked at her coldly. Her fingers quickly reached out and pressed all the sleeping pills that she had stored earlier on Yan Lu Er's mouth and nose. Yan Lu Er reached out her hand. She only moved a little before fainting. Old Lady Wang looked very calm, probably because she was used to doing this. Wang Ling, on the other hand, was sweating profusely. It was obvious that he was scared, especially when there was someone knocking on the door. Old Lady Wang looked at him with a vicious look in her eyes. Ling, listen to me. Nothing will happen. Lu Er has just disappeared. No one would have found out so quickly. Someone must have come to investigate. Didn't the authorities come to investigate 2 days ago? It's just a formality. As long as you behave normally and answer all their questions, there won't be any major issues. When you open the door later, ask them what they are here for. If they are here to investigate, open the door for them. Old Lady Wang paused as if she thought of something. She continued, if they say nothing, it means that something is wrong, then you don't have to open the door. Wang Ling was still a little flustered when he heard Old Lady Wang's words, but he knew what to do. At this point, there was no turning back. He was going to be the top scorer in the future, he could not have any stains on him. Moreover, 3 people had died. If the officials found out anything, his mother would be beheaded. He would definitely not allow that to happen. As long as he followed his mother's instructions and answered properly, there would not be any problems. This was because no one would link the disappearance to the Wang clan. It must be fine. Wang Ling wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. He took a deep breath, bent down and picked up a book from the wooden table. He then walked out of the house. Who is it? Wang Ling tried to make his voice sound natural. However, Hellion Vivian, who was familiar with psychology, could hear his real emotions from his rapid and unsteady breathing. This Wang Ling was very uneasy. Could it be that something had happened in the courtyard? Hellion Wei Wei originally wanted to ask for a private visit, but she immediately tossed it aside and quickly changed to another excuse. She said through the wooden door, "We're from the government, we're here to understand the situation. We need to talk about Zhang Yu in detail." Chapter 688. When Wang Ling heard Zhang Yu's name, his tense nerves immediately relaxed. His mother had already said that if someone wanted to investigate this matter, Zhang Yu would be the main suspect. It seemed that these people were indeed here to understand the situation. He had to act natural. Wang Ling's hand that was holding the wooden door paused. He took a deep breath before opening the door. When he saw Hellion Vivian and Beligaju standing outside the door, Wang Ling was obviously stunned and raised his guard. "Why are you here?" The minister of the Ministry of Appointments wanted to speak, but Hellion Vivian put her left hand behind her back and gestured for him to shut up. Then, she said casually, "Actually, we are not feng shui masters, but people from the government. The imperial court attached great importance to this case, so they sent us here for a visit. I know that there are many things that the people are unwilling to say because they are afraid of getting into trouble. But don't worry, no matter how powerful this criminal's family background is, we will handle it impartially. This time, we came here in the middle of the night to understand Zhang Yu's true situation." As Hellion Vivian spoke, Wang Ling's rising vigilance disappeared. He was hesitating whether to let them in or not. Then, he heard Old Lady Wang say from inside the room, "Ah Ling, let the 2 lords in. If I don't say some things, my conscience will feel uneasy." Old Lady Wong had her own reasons for letting Hellion Vivian and the others in. First, if she didn't let the two officers in at this time, it would make people suspicious. After all, her son was going to be the top scorer in the future. She couldn't let her son have any stains because of such a small matter. Second, she could use this opportunity to continue to lead the criminal to the second young master of the Zhang family. Third, not long after, the Yen family would find out that Lu Er was missing. Since these two officers were here, she could have an alibi. At that time, no one would suspect that she kidnapped Lu Er. As for Lu Er, she was confident that she could hide her well. That was why the far-sighted old lady Wang spoke at this time. Seeing that his mother had agreed, Wang Ling naturally didn't have any objections. He moved aside to allow Hellion Vivian and Beligaju to enter the courtyard. After some thought, he turned around and locked the wooden door. The loud noise made the Minister of Personnel, who was squatting in the corner, feel very uneasy. He didn't know what would happen in the courtyard. Once the door was closed, he couldn't see anything. In addition, the murderer this time was very likely to be a ghost. Could His Highness and the others really handle it? Hellion Vivian also noticed Wang Ling's abnormal actions. She raised her eyebrows but did not say anything. She only glanced at Beligaju beside her. His Highness's walking posture was still very noble and indifferent, as if it didn't matter to him whether the door was closed or not. When Wang Ling saw this, he couldn't help but feel a little unbalanced. This made him feel even more uncomfortable than seeing Zhang Yu. This was because Zhang Yu had too many flaws that he could find. And the man in front of her seemed to be too perfect. The aura emanating from his body was something that he couldn't reach no matter how hard he tried. So what if he had some money? When he became the top scorer in the future, these officials of the Ministry of Personnel would be nothing. When Wang Ling thought of this, he straightened his back and led Hellion Vivian and Beligaju into the house. The house looked very normal. Other than the fact that there was no fire and that it was a little cold and shabby, it looked like an ordinary house. Hellion Wei Wei did not ask Blackie to come out because the evil aura on its body was too strong. If it came out, it would alert the enemy. She simply asked a certain highness beside her through her consciousness stream, "Did you smell anything?" Hellion Vivian believed that in some aspects, His Highness' sense of smell might be more sensitive than Little Black's. How could someone as smart as His Highness not understand what she meant? He glanced over and Hellion Vivian immediately retracted her claws, looking very obedient. This made Beligaju's mood very good. Even his tone had a hint of a smile. Nothing. Nothing. Hellion Vivian frowned. Could it be that her previous guess was wrong? Old Lady Wang was very polite. When she saw them come in, she stood up from the rocking chair. Because of the dim light, she couldn't be seen clearly. "It's cold in the house, and there's no hot water. Please take a seat. My Ling has been an honest child since he was young. He doesn't know how to interact with others. Did he offend the two of you just now?" Old Lady Wang spoke very carefully. She looked like a commoner trying to curry favor with the officials. If it wasn't Hellion Vivian, anyone else would have been fooled by her. Perhaps this was also the reason why after the first missing person case, the officers didn't find anything strange about the Wang family even after they investigated every household. However, Hellion Wei Wei noticed a small detail, and that was what she was wearing. It was a cotton garment that was worn in autumn. It looked very thin, and did not even have the slightest bit of wind resistance effect. Before coming here, Hellion Vivian had more or less understood the mother and son pair. Wang Ling was a typical Phoenix man in modern society. He thought that all girls liked other people because of their money, but they didn't like him because they didn't realize their own potential. On the surface, he looked like a gentle scholar, but in reality, he was hiding a lot of jealousy in his heart. However, there was one thing that he was especially filial to old lady Wang. Perhaps it was because Wang Ling's father passed away when he was young, so whenever he had something, he would immediately think of giving it to old lady Wang. But now, Wang Ling had at least 2 cotton-padded coats on him, but he didn't have one left for old lady Wang. When Helene Vivian came in, she noticed that old lady Wang didn't tremble at all because of the cold. In psychology, there was a term called behavior observation. Anyone could lie with their words and act with their expressions, but their body language was often uncontrollable. They would do what they were supposed to do. From old lady Wang's current behavior, Helene Vivian could conclude that she wasn't cold at all. In the capital, which was more than 10 degrees Celsius below zero, she actually didn't feel cold at all. This was the biggest difference. Helene Vivian narrowed her eyes, but didn't show her feeling. Instead, she went along with old lady Wang's words and smiled. "Old lady, you don't have to be nervous. We're just here to understand the situation. After all, in this alley, the one who knows Zhang Yu the best should be your Wang family." Old lady Wang stood on the spot and sighed. "Originally, we really shouldn't say anything about the Zhang family." That day, the 2 officials were present, and old lady Zhang said everything that should be said. The Zhang and Wang families aren't fated to be together, and our Zhang family won't let a woman who has had relations with another man into our family. I don't know about other things, but there's one thing that I haven't said. Now that I think about it, it might be helpful to you. Chapter 689. Oh. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows with interest as her gaze landed on a piece of pink cloth under the stool. Madame Wang and her son would never wear clothes of this color. Someone must have been here earlier. While Helene Wei was analyzing the situation, she did not forget to look into old lady Wang's eyes and asked, "What's the matter?" The day Ling disappeared, she seemed to have quarreled with the second young master of the Zhang family. Old Madame Wang lowered her head as she spoke. "Actually, it's very embarrassing to say this. Our Wang family has never done anything wrong. Wang Ling studied harder than anyone else and will definitely have a bright future. However, Ling just had to follow young Master Zhang. In the end, the 2 of them quarreled and the second young master of the Zhang family didn't seem to want to continue with her. He said that if Ling continued to pester him, he would send someone to teach the Zhang family a lesson." Old Madame Wang didn't continue speaking. She knew that by saying this, the 2 officers in front of her would be able to link many things together. As expected, Helene Vivian nodded and smiled faintly. "Old Madame Wang, what you said is very helpful to the case. We know what to do now. Milord, please don't tell the Zhang family that I was the one who said this." Old Madame Wang even added this sentence when Helene Vivian and the others stood up, as if she was really afraid of offending the Zhang family. Helene Vivian's smile deepened and said meaningfully, "Don't worry, I won't tell the Zhang family about this. They don't need to know." That's good, that's good." Old Madame Wang seemed to be relieved and nodded. She said to her son, "Ling, it's dark outside. Send the 2 milords out." "Okay." Wang Ling responded and walked towards Helene Vivian. Who knew that when he approached the 2 officers, he saw a blur in front of him and the multi-faced person actually grabbed his neck. Wang Ling froze and looked at Helene Vivian with a face full of anger. "What are you doing?" Even old Madame Wang was a little anxious by this sudden change. "Milord, what do you mean by this? Why are you grabbing our Ling's neck?" Helene Vivian curled her lips and said to old Madame Wang, "Old Madame Wang, the time for acting is over. Your acting skills are very good and you are very smart. However, as long as you do something, there will be traces left behind. Release the girl that you have captured and your son might still be able to live." What was the best way to make a criminal submit? Of course, it was to hold on to her most important When she was in modern times, she wasn't a good person. Of course, the most effective, the most was the most of the most effective methods. The moment she saw the shards of pink cloth on the ground, she had already made up her mind to kidnap Wang Ling in exchange for a hostage. The moment the Wang SSSSS, Vivians of the Wang's SS from the dry coldness just now, it had turned into an uncomfortably gloomy coldness. A gust of wind blew in from an unknown source, causing old lady Wang's hair to flutter. The dark spots and wrinkles that were covered by her hair adorned her deathly pale face. It was indescribably terrifying. I originally wanted to be polite to you, but since you are so aggressive, then there is no need to be friendly anymore. I warn you, you better let my son go. Otherwise, not to mention those girls, I won't even let you guys go. As if it was affected by the soaring resentment, a rumbling sound was heard. Lightning struck down and the entire sky above the Wang family's courtyard turned pitch black. It was as if something was slowly gathering here. A large group of rats ran over from the corner of the wall. The Minister of Personnel and the surrounding officials felt an indescribable sense of fear and uneasiness when they saw this. Helian Wei Wei also wrinkled her shapely eyebrows. She'd never seen anyone with such a strong aura of resentment. The resentment doesn't just belong to her. Bailey Jiaju glanced at the sky outside the window. His voice was neither fast nor slow. Today is a cloudy day, the gate of hell is wide open. At noon, the malicious ghosts that the netherworld cannot control will gather here. We must think of a way to prevent them from being infected. Otherwise, in order to control the source of infection, the netherworld will most likely close all the doors that are connected to the human world in advance, even the path of reincarnation will be locked. As Helian Wei Wei listened, a silver knife appeared in her hand and slashed Wang Ling's face directly. She looked at old lady Wang calmly and said in a calm voice, "All right, I'd like to see if you're faster at summoning malicious spirits or my knife. Next, I'll strangle your throat." After all, human lives are nothing in old lady Wang's eyes. "You hurt All Ling. Good. Good. Since you want to die so much, I'll let you have a taste of being haunted by malicious ghosts." Old Madame Wang roared. Her voice was sharp and hoarse. She stretched her black fingernails forward. The surrounding black fog seemed to have gathered and rushed toward Helian Vivian. Old Madame Wang's murderous aura was stronger than ever. Even the black fog expanded more than twice its original size. These malicious ghosts were now following old Madame Wang's orders. If she asked them to possess someone, they would immediately haunt that person to death. Originally, she did not want to touch these two officials. After all, killing an official was different from killing a normal person. It would definitely cause more trouble. But she couldn't care less. These two people gave her too much of a sense of danger, especially the shorter one. He was too smart, so smart that it made people feel scared. In addition, he actually hurt her son. It was simply unforgivable. No one could escape from these ghosts. After they died, she would let these malicious ghosts take over their bodies and report everything about Zhang Yu to the higher-ups. Once the case was over, she would let the malicious ghosts leave their bodies. In this way, no one would know about what happened today. Everything was done by Zhang Yu. It had nothing to do with the Wang family. Her son would also get married and become the top scorer in the exam without a stain on his record. Old Madame Wang was indeed smart and thoughtful. However, what she did not know was that the two people standing in front of her were not normal people. Just as she was smiling at her perfect plan, the malicious ghosts that were charging toward the two people suddenly stopped in their tracks as if they were frightened by something unknown. Old Madame Wang frowned. What was going on? Once again, she used the resentment in her body. However, she realized that the malicious ghosts still did not dare to move forward. At this moment, she realized that the official who had not spoken all this time had curled his thin lips into a faint smile. His eyes were as cold as the ice in winter and flashed with an unusual golden light. "Who are you?" Chapter 690. Old Lady Wang felt as if something was slipping out of her control. The man did not even look at her. He turned his handsome and noble face to the side and bit the black glove on his hand. At that moment, it was as if an ancient Sanskrit hymn could be heard from afar. Piece after piece of black feathers slowly fell to the ground. The evil aura emitted from his body made all the dark creatures tremble. Old Lady Wang only saw him move in the blink of an eye. In just a blink of an eye, his hand had pierced through the hearts of 5 malicious ghosts. As if he had been burned by something, the malicious ghosts screamed in agony and were quickly turned into puddles of black liquid. After Baligaju had done all this, he frowned slightly and took off his glove, throwing it aside. From the beginning to the end, his actions had been so elegant, as if he had not just killed any malicious ghosts. He had only touched something dirty and needed to clean his hands. It was not just Wang Ling. Even old Lady Wang, who was no longer alive, began to tremble violently. She was filled with fear towards this man in front of her. She never thought that he would be so powerful. He was even more ruthless than she was. He killed as he pleased, as if any person or ghost was just a plaything in his hands. You're an exorcist." This was the only answer old Lady Wang could think of. However, she felt that something was not right. This man's aura did not have the slightest bit of holiness like a gentleman. Instead, his elegance was emitting an ancient evil. That evil made her legs go weak. She only wanted to bend her knees and worship him. However, the man only looked at her indifferently, as if she did not even have the right to speak to him. Hellion Vivian obviously knew that with a certain highness taking action, any malicious ghost could be dealt with. However, in order to completely destroy the source of the pollution, she must first find those missing girls. Until now, Hellion Weiwei still did not know what method old Lady Wang used to create the aura of resentment that could infect evil spirits. However, the only thing she was sure of was that it definitely had something to do with the missing girls. She had to find them quickly. Soon, a large number of malicious ghosts would arrive. Once they fell under old Lady Wang's control, the officers outside would most likely be possessed by them. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and said coldly, "Granny Wang, it's time to tell me your choice. Hand over those girls. Otherwise, my next stab won't be so gentle." "Why? Why are you treating us like this?" Old Lady Wang knew that she couldn't win against them, and her son was being held hostage by them. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "You don't care about those big cases, but you care about us. Even if you want to arrest someone, arrest me. What does that have to do with my son? He can be the top scorer in the future." Hellion Vivian glanced at old Lady Wang and said calmly, "He won't be the top scorer." "What did you say?" Old Lady Wang's eyes suddenly turned fierce. Hellion Vivian patted Wang Ling's face with the dagger. "There are countless people like him in the War Dragon dynasty. There are many more who are more talented than him, more hardworking than him, and more determined than him. Why should he be the top scorer? You're the same as those girls. You only know how to be mean to my son and talk bad about him. He's filial and serious in his studies. Why can't he be the top scorer? You see that we're poor, despise the poor and favor the rich. You don't have any sense of shame. That's why you trample on us. You all deserve to die." Old Lady Wang really wanted to strangle the person in front of her to death. Hellion Vivian sneered, "There's a drought at the border. Those people are much poorer than you. They don't even have food to eat. However, they never complain like you do. If they have the time, why don't they think about how to become stronger? If you want others to like you, you have to be worth it. Since he was young, he hasn't earned a single cent by himself. He can't do anything without you, his mother. He's also very proud and arrogant. You mother and son are also funny. You don't like this and that and you talk about how girls are like. You even expect them to marry you. If they don't want you, you say that they despise the poor and favor the rich. Even if that's the case, you should live a good life first before criticizing others. For someone like your son, even if he becomes the top scorer, he won't be a good official. Not to mention that he has a mother like you, his selfish and narrow-minded mind will never find fault with himself when something happens. His jealousy is so strong that it's scary. Sooner or later, there will be problems. What right do you have to say that about my son? What do you mean sooner or later? What jealousy is so scary? My son is the kindest and most righteous person in the world. You just can't stand my son doing well. The more old lady Wang spoke, the more agitated she became. She took a step forward. Hellion Vivian looked at the fluttering bed curtain behind her. Her eyes flashed, but her tone was still very calm. Whether you're rich or poor, the most important thing is how parents teach their children. For example, old lady Wang, you keep saying that this girl is cheap and that the boy only knows how to use money to oppress others. It's very easy for you to affect Wang Ling, who is by your side. Children are like their parents because their parents' words and actions affect them. You said that your son is kind and righteous. A truly kind and righteous person won't let his mother harm others. Old lady Wang, if I'm not wrong, you should have died a long time ago. It wasn't even winter when you died. Now, you're just a corpse. You. This was the second time old lady Wang was shocked by today's matter. How did you know? Ever since she heard about the matter between Zhang Ling and the second young master of the Zhang family, she caught a cold that night. Later, old lady Zhang came to ridicule her Ling for not having anything and was pestering her Ling like a toad. She thought that she might as well break off the engagement as soon as possible to save some face for both families. That day, everyone in the alley knew about the scandal of the Wang family. Her illness became even worse. In less than 2 days, she coughed up blood and her soul left her body. At this moment, a man in a white robe walked in. She had never seen such a gentle young master. He asked her if she wanted to teach those who looked down on her and her son a lesson. Of course, she wanted to, even in her dreams. She didn't just want those evil people to receive their retribution, she wanted to see her son get married and have children. The young master didn't ask for anything in return. He only taught her how to commit the crime. Chapter 691. She was originally worried that killing someone would harm her son. But after hearing the young master's words, she realized that this was an absolutely perfect plan. Not only could she kill with a borrowed knife, she could even uproot the Zhang family. There was no reason for her not to agree. Of course, she was willing to do anything. Moreover, the young master who saved her had even extended her lifespan. Even if she died, she could still move like a living person. She used more than 10 days to observe the time when Zhang Yu met those girls. During this time, her body was constantly changing. But other than Ling, no one else noticed. This person in front of her actually guessed that she was dead. Compared to old lady Wang's shock, Hellion Vivian was as calm as usual. Old lady Wang, do you really think that you're no different from a living person? Your fingers are black and long, and there are death spots on your face. These are signs that only appear after a person dies. Because you're a corpse, you can't even feel the most basic cold and heat. You've always been wearing the clothes you wore before you died. Old lady Wang's eyes widened as she listened. Helian Wei Wei continued calmly, it's been about 40 to 50 days since the end of autumn. As your son, it's impossible that Wang Ling doesn't know that you're in danger and what you're thinking. However, he didn't stop you. Or rather, it's not obvious that he stopped you, because deep down in his heart, he also wants those people to die. As Helian Wei Wei spoke, her gaze fell on Wang Ling, who was in her hands. Wang Ling finally stopped pretending to be honest and courteous. He shouted at the top of his voice, they deserve to die. That pair of bastards. Zhang Yu took advantage of his family's power and influence. Zhang Ling, is even more despicable. And those girls who only have money in their eyes and nothing else. These people don't deserve to live in this world. If that's the case, why did you only dare to kill Zhang Ling, and not Zhang Yu? Helian Vivian laughed mockingly. To put it bluntly, you're still afraid of him. He stole your fiancé, but you don't even dare to do anything. You just rely on your mother to do this and that for you. If you're really a man with guts, then show others what you're made of. Look at what you're doing. You only know how to bully the weak. Are you going to kill all the girls who look down on you and don't want to marry you? You said that others don't deserve to live in this world. What about you? Even an irresponsible and lazy piece of trash like you can live a good life, so why aren't others qualified to live? All of Wang Ling's words were blocked by Helian Vivian. His face turned green, but he could not refute a single word. The word, trash, was like a slap to the face, piercing through all of his self-esteem. Wang Ling clenched his fists and said, if I was born in the Zhang family, I would have been the top scorer. I wouldn't have ended up like this. Perhaps she was shocked by Helian Vivian's words, or perhaps her son's reaction was beyond old lady Wang's expectations. After all, her son had always disapproved of her actions and had tried to stop her. However, she did not expect that her son's resentment was even greater than hers. He even did not want her as his mother. Old lady Wang's hands dropped. She never thought that her son would have such thoughts. Helian Vivian's smile turned colder. A person like you, even if you were to change your family background, you would only be the second Zhang Yu. Who did your mother do so much for? You sure are good. You're quite an ingrate. Wang Ling's face turned red from Helian Vivian's words. Looking at old lady Wang's obvious sadness, he hurriedly explained, Mother, that's not what I meant. Old lady Wang shook her head, tears rolling down her face. Son, I don't blame you. You're right. If you were born in the Zhang family, you wouldn't have ended up like this. I'm sorry. I don't have that much money to help you build connections. Towards the end, old lady Wang's voice was choked with sobs. She covered her face with one hand and her shoulders were trembling. Old lady Wang, how long are you going to find excuses for your son's failure? Helian Wei Wei looked at him indifferently. Actually, you know better than anyone else why your son has become like this. You also know that the things he usually does are completely useless. He might as well find a job as a teacher. However, the people around him have already looked down on him. You feel that if even you give up on him, he will definitely be in a lot of pain. That's why you've been deceiving yourself to this extent. Old lady Wang didn't say anything, but she cried even harder. Helian Vivian's tone didn't change. Everyone wants revenge. You can do whatever you want to Zhang Ling, and Zhang Yu, but you want to kill those girls just because they don't want to marry your son. Old lady Wang, you don't have a daughter. If someone treats your daughter like this, can you tolerate it? Don't think that your own child is a child and other people's children are grass. In this world, no one owes you anything. Helian Vivian's last sentence made old lady Wang collapse. The viciousness on her face disappeared, leaving only pleading. I can tell you everything. Can you spare my son's life? He didn't do anything. Even if he wanted to, he was just thinking about it. He has never hurt anyone. I'm the one who planted all these bad karma. I'm the one who should go to hell. All right. Helene Vivian's gaze didn't change. But you won't be forgiven for your sins. Do what you have to do. It was true. If the Zhang family hadn't bullied others with their family's power and influence, if old lady Zhang hadn't gone overboard with her words, the tragedy wouldn't have developed to this point. But this wasn't an excuse to kill innocent people. Someone had to pay for the deaths of those young girls. Old lady Wang sniffled and nodded. I know that I've wronged those girls. We're all children who live on the same street. I don't know what happened to me. How could I be so heartless? The crying grew louder. Old lady Wang's voice was filled with guilt and regret. They're in a secret passage behind me. Other than Lu, who's still alive, the others are already. Sob, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Helene Vivian listened to old lady Wang's words. After letting go of Wang Ling, she walked over. She reached out and pulled. 3 corpses hanging in the air appeared in her sight. Yen Lu sat in the middle of the corpses. She was still wearing a wedding gown. The color of the wedding gown was like the blood that flowed out of a person's body. It was very uncomfortable to look at. Helene Vivian instinctively felt that the wedding gown was not that simple. Chapter 692. What's with this wedding gown? Helene Vivian turned around and asked Old Lady Wang. Old Lady Wang had a guilty look on her face. I thought Lu was not bad, so I wanted her to marry All Ling. She didn't agree, so I forced her to wear the wedding gown. That's not what I'm asking. Helene Vivian looked at the wedding gown on Yen Lu, her eyes darkening. I want to know how this wedding gown came about. It doesn't look right. A trace of astonishment flashed through Old Lady Wang's eyes. She smiled bitterly and said, It's indeed not ordinary. This wedding dress was sewn by me personally. I listened to young master's words and bought a white cloth. I used the blood of those girls to dye it red. The young master said that as long as 2 people wear the wedding gown and go through the ceremony together, the girl will love the man for the rest of her life, and never leave him. Upon hearing that, Helene Vivian stopped what she was doing and exchanged glances with Beligaju. This was where the resentment gathered. The dead girls did not rest in peace at all, whether it was their souls or resentment, they were all locked in this wedding gown. That was why it affected the dead souls that passed by. Once a soul came close, it would be infected. However, because it was not a direct contact, there was no immediate reaction. Instead, it took a few days for resentment to form. Then, the resentful souls would infect other dead souls. It was no wonder the King of Hell wanted to shut down the entire underworld. Under the circumstances where the source of the infection could not be found, who knew how many dead souls were being infected in a day? The source had to be eliminated, only then the resentment would disappear completely. The worst thing now was that Yen Lu was wearing the wedding gown. Helene Vivian was not sure if the current Yen Lu was still the original Yen Lu. It was very possible that the resentment hidden in the wedding gown had already spread to Yen Lu. But it was not certain. She did not know if Yen Lu was possessed or not. Because the other person was also wearing a wedding gown. Helene Vivian turned to look at Wang Ling. Her thoughts had always been tight and clear, even at a time like this. Marriage was a matter of 2 people. Since Yen Lu was wearing a bridal gown, Wang Ling must be wearing a bridal gown. One of them must have been tainted with resentment. Evil spirits, especially when a few ghosts had been devoured and condensed into evil spirits, were usually more cunning than humans. It would not obediently stay in the wedding dress and wait for her to burn it. Just when she realized that something was wrong with the wedding dress, the evil spirit must have possessed someone. Actually, it was very easy to get rid of the resentment. All he had to do was to burn the wedding gown and kill Yen Lu and Wang Ling. But Yen Lu was innocent. Hellion Vivian didn't have the right to decide the life and death of a kind-hearted girl when she wasn't sure if she was possessed. He couldn't bring himself to do it. Therefore, she had to figure out who the evil spirit in the wedding dress was. Was it Wang Ling, or Yen Lu, Wei Wei's pair of eyes shrewdly and carefully slid past the two people's bodies. Next, she tried to wake Yen Lu up. Hellion Vivian's methods were never gentle. Especially in a situation like this where time was tight, she was even more unrestrained. She took the cold water on the table and splashed it on Yen Lu. This was a method to wake a person up quickly. Hellion Vivian did not only save time. She could also check if Yen Lu was possessed. This was because even if a person was in a deep sleep, their skin and senses were still awake. If she didn't wake up after being splashed with cold water, there would definitely be a problem. However, even if she woke up, she would not be completely cleared of suspicion, because the other party could be faking it. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes, not letting go of any expression on Yen Lu's face. She first grunted, then opened her eyes. When she saw Old Lady Wang, she was obviously terrified and stepped back. "Don't come over, don't come over." Old Lady Wang opened her mouth, her face full of tears. "Lu, I'm sorry." Hellion Vivian did not say anything, she continued to observe Yen Lu. Yen Lu then saw Hellion Vivian standing in front of her. It's you, the feng shui master." Then, she saw Beligaju. She seemed to be relieved. "That's great, you're here to save me." Hellion Vivian grunted in acknowledgement, but said something irrelevant. "Wang Ling, Yen Lu, take off your wedding clothes." Wang Ling's expression changed. "How did you know I'm wearing wedding clothes too?" When he went to open the door just now, he purposely put on a long cotton-padded jacket. No one should be able to tell what he was wearing underneath. Hellion Vivian glanced at him. "There must be a bridegroom if there's a bridesmaid. Why? You don't want to take it off?" "No, I just want to know, why do you want us to take off our wedding clothes?" Wang Ling laughed coldly. "If you want to interrogate us, you can just arrest us and lock us in the yamen." "What is this? I'm starting to doubt if you're really an imperial envoy here to investigate." Old Lady Wang had never thought of this. Now that she heard her son's words, her gaze towards Hellion Vivian was filled with suspicion. Hellion Vivian did not waste time with them. She walked straight to Beligaju's side. She reached out and touched the man's waist. Beligaju did not stop her. His thin lips were half-curved, handsome and devilish. Hellion Vivian felt for a long time but did not find anything. She was wondering if he did not bring his token. She saw the man slowly spread his fair and slender fingers, his movements elegant, his voice clear. "You're looking for this?" Hellion Vivian grunted. "Why didn't you tell me earlier that the token was with you? Seeing how you were touching it so enthusiastically, how could I disturb my wife?" Beligaju's voice carried a charming smile when he said the last few words. "After all, I'm the one being kept. Of course I have to follow the rules." Hellion Vivian, "Rules my ass." He was clearly taking advantage of her in another way. Shameless, too shameless. Hellion Vivian naturally would not argue with His Highness. No crow in the world was as black as His Highness. With an indifferent expression, she took the token from Wang Ling and waved her hand. She said to Wang Ling, "You are also a scholar, so you should be able to recognize the words on this." Looking at the gilded token in front of him, Wang Ling's eyes suddenly widened. The gaze that fell on Beligaju also changed. That was because every educated person in the capital knew that the emperor had once given the third prince a gold medal. That gold medal not only symbolized the third prince's status, but also gave him a certain amount of authority. The words written on that gold medal were the words, Imperial Presence. Chapter 693. Thump. Wang Ling immediately knelt on the ground. He was so nervous that he stuttered, "Greetings to the royal family." When old lady Wang and Yen Lu heard what he said, they gasped in disbelief. This person was the third prince of the imperial court. Although old lady Wang did not kneel immediately, one could see the shock in her eyes. After Wang Ling knelt, Yen Lu kowtowed as well, her hands trembling. Beligage's expression did not change. His elegant side profile was like a perfect ice sculpture, cold and indifferent. Helene Vivian's tone was calm. She glanced at the trembling Wang Ling. "Is there anyone else who doubts our identity now?" Wang Ling shook his head violently. He dared not speak anymore. As if he was still in the midst of this sudden shock, he did not make a sound for a long while. "Since there are no more doubts, take them off." Helene Vivian looked at Wang Ling and Yen Lu. Both of them were stunned at the same time. Wang Ling was the first to move, followed by Yen Lu. Both of them did not reject each other. They were very cooperative when they took off their clothes. Helene Wei's eyes deepened and didn't say anything. She directly picked up the lit oil lamp on the wooden table and looked at it in front of her eyes. After that, she casually threw it onto the two wedding robes. Her movements were very nimble and didn't even give people a chance to regret. Wang Ling and Yen Lu were still kneeling on the ground. They were a distance away. They did not dare to raise their heads. Hearing the sudden sound of the fire so close at hand, his body trembled. Helene Vivian looked at them condescendingly, her thin lips curling slightly. "Now that the wedding gowns are gone, you can't go back even if you want to. I'll give you two choices. 1, you come out yourself, I'll help you release your soul. 2, I'll drag you out and destroy your soul." Both of them did not respond. However, the malicious spirit hidden within laughed coldly. "Annihilate it. What arrogance, do you think I'm the same as a normal malicious spirit?" It had seen how powerful the man was. It was indeed shocking. Until now, it still couldn't figure out the man's identity. But to it, no matter how powerful someone was, as long as they didn't destroy its territory, even if they left behind a little bit of resentment, it could come back to life. This woman was indeed smart. She knew to burn the wedding gown. But did she think that it couldn't tell? She didn't even know which one was it, so she said such harsh words to it. Humans. He was too full of himself. Soon, there was less than an hour left. If it hid well enough, it would not be able to escape. Half an hour later, all the ghosts would be gathered here. At that time, its resentment would infect all of them. Not only could they possess the bodies of humans, but they could also bring resentment with them to the underworld. Because today was the day of 10,000 yen, among the ghosts gathered this time, there would be those who had just passed away. It was much easier for these undead spirits to enter the underworld compared to the previous ones. They were on the Book of Life and Death and were summoned by the Netherworld operatives. There was no need for them to barge in, as the ghost servants would bring them into the underworld. As long as one of them could enter, one would spread to 10, 10 would spread to 100, and all the souls in the underworld would be infected. When the babies were born, all the pregnant women in the capital would give birth to evil spirits. When that day came, the seal would be broken, and the demons and ghosts imprisoned in the underworld would rush out of the ground. Humans, on the other hand, would become their food. The malicious spirit laughed softly. Its eyes, hidden in the darkness, glanced at old lady Wang. This old woman was useless. It originally thought that she was different from others. At least she was ruthless, but it didn't expect that she would be convinced. As expected of a human. Even if she became a corpse, she was still weak. She wasn't worth its cooperation at all. Although it was personally made by it, such a low-energy corpse was not worthy of being its master. Kill her. Resentment emerged inch by inch from the bottom of its heart. The malicious spirit's face changed back and forth. One moment, it was Xiangling, and the next moment, it was Wang Wanshi. Those who were killed by Old Lady Wang all revealed unprecedented hatred. If it weren't for the Wang family, they wouldn't have died. They definitely wouldn't let these two people go. Why are you talking so much to him? Bailey Jia Ju paced forward. His black boots with bright stirrups stepped on the ground. The sound was very deep and heavy. His walking posture was still very elegant. His thin lips carried an evil charm that was like a smile yet not a smile. In the depths of his eyes, there seemed to be a layer of ice. Kill both of them. There must be one. When Old Lady Wang heard this, her expression changed. Then, she stood in front of her son and knelt on the ground. She kowtowed a few times, and her forehead was full of blood. Your Highness, I beg you. Don't kill my son. Didn't you just promise me that you wouldn't touch my son? Beligaju looked at her indifferently. The person who promised you was not me. Old Lady Wang didn't expect to hear this answer. Her entire body was paralyzed on the ground. Ling didn't do anything wrong. He might be possessed by a malicious spirit. If he doesn't die, more people will die. Beligaju's voice was calm as he interrupted her. There was no expression on his face. You were the one who made the wedding dress so that your son could get married. Now that your son has worn the wedding dress, he has to pay the price. Isn't that fair? Old Lady Wang covered her face and cried bitterly. She really knew that she was wrong. She never thought that a wedding gown would harm her son. Was this the retribution that the heavens gave her? Old Lady Wang shook her head and looked at Hellion Vivian with tears in her eyes. She sobbed. I beg you, spare my son. I'm willing to do anything. I beg you. Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. Yen Lu seemed to be frightened. She suddenly distanced herself from Wang Ling. Wang Ling clenched his fists. His voice was also hoarse. Mother, don't be like this. Ah Ling, my poor Ah Ling. Following Old Lady Wang's cries of despair, the black fog in the sky thickened. A thunderclap sounded from the horizon without warning. The soldiers at the periphery were shocked. They looked at each other and touched the raindrops on their faces. There was an indescribable fear in their eyes. It wasn't only the officers surrounding the Wang family who were uneasy. Even the elderly on the streets were startled awake. Every door and window was shut tight. Those who carried their grandchildren covered their eyes, afraid that the children would see something unclean. After all, the elderly had lived longer than the young people. They were more knowledgeable. People always said that the plum rain season was an eventful season. It wasn't without reason. Moreover, it was winter now. It shouldn't rain in the first place. Chapter 694. It could be said that this was not a good sign in itself. Whether it was entering tombs to steal treasures or exorcising ghosts, the biggest taboo was a rainy day. This was because there was energy in the water. It was very likely to cause a zombie to mutate. At this time, the King of Hell, who had originally said that he would close the gates of the underworld 3 days later, issued an order. If the rain did not stop, the gates of the underworld must be closed at midnight. When the little King of Hell heard this, he slapped the Book of Life and Death in his hand. Old man, are you playing with me? The King of Hell hated it when people called him old. He gripped the teacup in his hand and his face darkened. I think you're itching for a beating again. From today onwards, you're not allowed to take a single step out of hell. You're forcing me to run away from home. The little King of Hell had 2 horns on his head, and a death symbol was printed on the corner of his handsome mouth. Do you think I like hell so much? I'm going to the human world now. Little Hook is still waiting for me in the human world. The king of hell sneered, didn't they kick you back last time? Why would they wait for you? Isn't it time for you to wake up from your daydream? Old man, seeing that you're my father, I'll bear with you this time. The little king of hell lifted the huge black axe and prepared to jump to the human world. Unfortunately, his skills were inferior. After jumping for a long time, he still could not jump out of this small place. The little king of hell turned around and looked at his father. If you're so capable, let go of me. I'll fight you one-on-one. Why should I fight you one-on-one? You're asking for a beating. Keep quiet for a while, you brat. The king of hell also had a headache. This brat thought that he wanted to close the gates of hell. It was all because he saw that the situation was not right. If something really sneaked in, it would be more troublesome to deal with when the time comes. It was obvious that the king of hell was an impatient person. He casually threw the little king of hell onto a chair and continued to instruct the judges. They had to match the names and dates of death of all the people in the book of life and death before midnight. The little king of hell saw that he was busy, and secretly glanced at the two-headed dog behind him. That was the pet that followed the little king of hell all year round. The two-headed hound was busy with a ball. When they saw their master looking at them, they stopped playing. One of the heads said, "Lao air, why did the little master call us over? He definitely wants us to untie him." The other head said proudly, its chest puffed out as it waited for the little king of hell's praise. But, its voice and movements were too loud. Not only the busy king of hell, but even the judges looked at the little king of hell. The little king of hell cursed under his breath and held his forehead with his small hand. Why did he raise such a stupid dog? It was even stupider than a husky. There was no other way. Even if he knew that his father would fly into a rage after hearing what he said, he still had to say it. "Old man, do you still remember the great devil who used to be on par with you? He's still alive. I've seen him." In fact, his father had never beaten him. He said this because he didn't want his father to be too agitated. Sure enough, the king of hell pushed the judge in front of him away, his eyes spitting fire. "Where is that bastard?" The little king of hell replied coolly, "Why should I tell you?" The king of hell narrowed his eyes, and an amber golden light overflowed. "Do you think you can threaten me like this? Anyway, he's getting more and more handsome." The king of hell's son pretended to be nonchalant and said, "If mom sees him, she'll definitely abandon you completely." Did you forget how mom praised him back then? She said that he was like a god from the ninth heaven, that he had a demonic nature, but he could be as gentle as water. Sigh, a person's temperament is the most important thing. Dad, I'm not trying to discourage you, but although you're good-looking, the violent and loyal dog type is no longer popular nowadays. You need to be gentle and elegant, but you don't have any of those qualities. Whoosh! The little king of hell's words immediately poked the king of hell's sore spot. "Tell me where he is, and I'll let you go to the human world to see your little Hook." The king of hell couldn't tolerate a man who was praised by his wife the most. He would definitely kill all of them. The little king of hell seized the opportunity and clapped his paws. Deal. The father and son made a deal. One of them went to the palace with a murderous aura. The other used the two-headed dog and quickly locked onto the position of the wolf dog beside Hellion Vivian. Then, he bent down and landed on the roof of the Wong family. At this moment, Hellion Vivian's eyes also darkened because of the sudden rain. When the little king of hell saw her, he immediately jumped into the courtyard. "Woman." Hellion Vivian looked at the vicious little boy in front of her and raised her eyebrows. "Why are you here?" "I'm here to tell you that my father is preparing to close the path of reincarnation in advance. Fortunately, he's a jealous person. When he heard the name of the great demon, he put down everything and rushed to the palace." Helene Vivian listened silently. She couldn't help but look back at Beligaju. His Highness had a perfect and handsome face. The moonlight and rain were nothing to him. He didn't even take the little King of Hell's words to heart. But, Your Highness, what did you do? How could you make the King of Hell lose his mind in an instant and come to the human world to hunt you down? Helene Vivian didn't doubt His Highness' ability to attract hatred at all. But he himself had never cared about it. It was quite sad to be His Highness' enemy, but... The little King of Hell continued, he has always been fast. If he can't find the great demon in the palace, he will immediately continue with the plan to close the path of reincarnation. The judges are ready now. When it's midnight, the gates of the underworld will be closed. Unless the rain can stop, the people of the underworld won't be able to find out which souls have resentment. So, they can only use such an extreme method. Helene Vivian frowned. She didn't blame the little King of Hell for suddenly going back on his words. She knew that closing the underworld was considered for the overall situation. It was also the most effective way to control the scope of the infection so far. Unless the source of the infection was immediately destroyed, the path of reincarnation would really be closed. Helene Vivian turned around and looked at Yen Lu and Wang Ling. Then, she narrowed her eyes and slowly walked toward Wang Ling. If that's the case, we can't waste any more time. At this moment, the corners of the malicious spirit's mouth that was buried under his long hair slowly curled up. There was a strangeness that didn't belong to humans. It knew that no matter how smart a person was, they would always overlook harmless weaklings. Moreover, it had already created some confusion with its plan. It was only at the moment when it burned the wedding dress that it chose this person. Chapter 695. No. Old Lady Wang's begging turned into a roar. Wang Ling closed his eyes, waiting for Helene Vivian's dagger to fall. The evil spirit lowered its head and laughed, the curve of its lips getting wider. As long as they did not kill it now, they would all die in a while. Very well, let everything end like this. However, out of everyone's expectations, Helene Vivian suddenly turned around, and a few swishing sounds could be heard. Yen Lu who was initially hesitant, was suddenly surrounded by daggers. Those daggers were different from the others, they emitted a faint Buddhist light, as if they could trap something. Yen Lu widened her eyes, big drops of tears fell, and her voice trembled. This is... Are you still going to pretend? Helene Vivian twirled the last dagger in her hand. A black dog vaguely stood in front of her left. Yen Lu shrunk her shoulders. My lady, I don't know what you're talking about. Pretend? I'm not pretending. As she spoke, she looked at Beligaju and begged pitifully, Your Highness, I really don't know anything, I beg you, please save me. You don't know anything. Helene Wei smiled faintly as she walked towards her. She was 2 steps away from her and said, You haven't come close to my front left since just now. You've been looking over here vigilantly. Actually, you're not hiding from Wang Ling, you're hiding from Blackie. The aura of resentment here is too strong. Xiao He can't confirm your aura, but your actions have explained everything. You're afraid of Xiao He. Yen Lu cried more and more pitifully, her tears blurred. Ever since I was caught by old Lady Wang, I was in a daze. Now I'm scared even if there's a slight movement. It's not because of the Xiao He that you're talking about. My lady, have you ever been caught? Do you understand that feeling? I thought I was dead for sure. I never thought that Ling, and the others were taken away by old Lady Wang, who lived next door to my house. I also never thought that she would ignore my wishes and make me the daughter-in-law of the Wang family. When I saw those corpses, my heart turned cold. I desperately wanted to call for help, but old Lady Wang had drugged the tea. Other than feeling weak, I only felt despair. Even Wang Ling could only be his mother's helper. I didn't expect that they would repay my kindness with such ingratitude even though I had helped them so much. Now, my lady, you're pointing a dagger at me. My lady, aren't you afraid of retribution? I'm not afraid. Helian Weiwei lazily dug her ears and said in a calm voice, because you didn't act like someone who had been surprised. I suspected you from the beginning. Under normal circumstances, people who were kidnapped would act after they were rescued. This is because people's subconscious actions are usually faster than their thinking, such as grabbing the rescuer's hand or jumping into their arms. Under such circumstances, people would not consider the difference between a man and a woman. I was very close to you at that time, but you didn't approach me. Instead, you shifted your attention to old lady Wang at the first moment. This didn't seem like the behavior of someone who had just been rescued. Instead, it seemed like you reacted after thinking about it. Yen Lu's eyes were red, as if she had been wronged. You said that I reacted after thinking, then what about Wang Ling? He refused to take off his wedding clothes from the start, isn't that more suspicious? Yen Lu's voice was very hoarse. She cried after she finished speaking. If anyone else saw her like this, they would definitely feel that this girl was very pitiful. However, it was a pity that the person she was facing was Helian Vivian. As the person involved, you should know better than me why Wang Ling refused to take off his wedding clothes. Did you think that I wouldn't have thought that the aura of resentment would shift according to one's will? If I'm not wrong, before the wedding clothes were burned, you could have shifted at will. You're very smart, you know how to use your advantages. Once you heard that I wanted to investigate you, you immediately started to create chaos. You, who had already possessed Yen Lu's body, separated a part of your aura of resentment to influence Wang Ling, but your real body had always been in Yen Lu's body. When Wang Ling spoke, my suspicion of you was immediately shifted to him. You've achieved your goal. Although the wedding clothes were burned, it would affect a part of your aura of resentment, but as long as your real body was protected, absorbing the aura of resentment would be a piece of cake for you. Yen Lu's eyes were red, her hands hidden in her long sleeves clenched. You want to kill me based on these guesses? Have you ever thought that what if you've killed the wrong person? There's no what if, you're that malicious spirit. Helian Vivian's thin lips curled into a meaningful smile. I'm guessing that from the moment Yen Lu put on her wedding clothes, you've already infiltrated her body. Once the ceremony was over, you'd be able to completely invade her body. No matter what we do, we won't be able to expel you. Old Lady Wang had killed quite a number of people, but none of the girls caught her eye, so you didn't have the chance to possess any of them. When Yen Lu finally appeared, of course you'd act immediately, but you didn't expect this rare opportunity to be interrupted. You could only use the method of possession to stay in Yen Lu's body, then hide behind the bed curtain and observe our every move. When I was talking to old Lady Wang in the beginning, I noticed the bed curtain behind her. I thought it was because something was hidden inside that caused the deformation of the bed curtain, but now I realize that it wasn't because something was hidden inside, it was because you were standing there and listening to our conversation. At this point, Helian Vivian paused, his eyes filled with malice. And you've just admitted it yourself. You said that you were drugged by old Lady Wang, and it was difficult for you to even call for help. That means that the drug you've been drugged with will cause your limbs to become weak and your voice to become muted for a long time. However, you don't look like you've been drugged at all. I didn't know about this at first, but now that you've said it, I'm even more certain that you're that malicious spirit. At that moment, Yen Lu's body froze, then she laughed out loud, her face filled with indescribable madness. I never thought that there would be such a smart person among the humans, but do you think you can get rid of me with brute force? If not for the exorcising tribe, even the king of hell wouldn't be able to do anything to me. If you're so capable, kill this girl as well. Chapter 696. Don't think that I don't know that you can't do anything to this girl. The evil spirit held the side of its face with one hand, a demonic red light shone from its left eye, causing its entire face to become abnormally fearful. It who was originally kneeling now stood up straight, its voice grew colder as it laughed. You want to destroy me with just these human weapons? Ha, dream on. Even if you know a little bit of magic, don't think that you can subdue me. The evil spirit's plan was very good, but what it did not expect was that after hearing its words, the other party did not panic at all. Instead, the other party looked at it calmly and asked, "Do you think that's just an ordinary dagger?" What do you mean?" Just as the evil spirit finished its sentence, a layer of Buddha's light rose around it. The Buddha's light was like a shield, firmly covering it in the middle. Helian Wei Wei smiled faintly. You are an evil spirit formed by the accumulation of resentment. If even a little bit of resentment leaks out, you will be resurrected. To avoid future troubles, of course, we have to cut off your connection with the outside world first. Although I don't know how to use yellow talismans to exorcise demons, I know the principle. These daggers have been soaked in incense from the temple. It shouldn't be a problem to cut off your resentment. However, it does take some time for them to connect with each other. I have to thank you for cooperating with me just now. You were attracting my attention just now. The evil spirit suddenly understood. The expression on its face became even more vicious. You have already made up your mind to attack me. You damned woman. The evil spirit struggled, wanting to pounce towards Helian Vivian. However, the Buddha's light that came from all directions prevented it from going up to the sky or down to the ground. Even the resentment that was released from its eyes could not be released. Instead, it gathered deeper and deeper, redder and redder. Yen Lu, Er's face turned into Zhang Ling, Er's face, then into another girl's face. Each face looked extremely terrifying. You are the same as that pair of mother and son, both of you are heartless. What did we do wrong? Why should we be treated like this? They are the murderers, but you are punishing us. What kind of justice is this? It's just an excuse that humans find for their hypocrisy. The screams of the malicious ghosts stirred up a whirlwind in the surroundings. The souls that had drifted over from the gates of hell began to gather in the dark clouds above the Wang family manor. Not good. The king of hell's son, who was carrying a black axe, furrowed his brows as he stared at the dark clouds. The surrounding ghosts have heard its grievance and are starting to change. Helian Vivian glanced at him. Then you're not going to stop it? We of the underworld are not like you humans. We do things with principles. The little king of hell smiled viciously. Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. As long as the dead spirits are taking revenge and don't involve the innocent, we have no right to stop them. Helian Vivian stopped talking to Little King of Hell. Instead, she turned to Old Lady Wang and said, "You've heard him. A life for a life. Do you want to deal with this yourself, or should I?" With tears in her eyes, Old Lady Wang said, "Sir, please do it." "No. Don't kill my mother." Wang Ling shouted. Helian Vivian didn't hesitate and kicked him to the side. "What right do you have to say no? Do you think you're not wrong? Although you didn't kill her, if you were a little more capable and didn't always blame others, things wouldn't have come to this. You'd better not provoke me. Otherwise, I might not be able to control myself and beat a phoenix scumbag like you to death. Do you think you're the only one who's a treasure? When you heard those girls' screams just now, don't you feel any remorse?" Wang Ling listened to Helian Vivian's words and knelt down. "I know I was wrong. I'll be a good person in the future. It doesn't matter to them who you become. What's important is very simple. A life for a life. You say you'll be a good person now, but who gave these girls a chance to be good people? Besides, there are innocent people among them, and some of them are even indebted to you. Get out of the way, don't make me cut you." Hellion Wei Wei had always done things this way, not to mention that most of the girls who died later on were innocent. She had to seek justice for them. This way, the connection between the evil spirit and the surrounding wronged spirits would disappear. She knew that time was of the essence. But not until the last moment. She didn't want to use the most extreme method to make those girls vanish into thin air. She wanted to release their souls. In this world, there was a lot of love. Even though she hadn't experienced much of it since she was young. She had seen her mother's depression after learning that her father had cheated on her. But she could never forget how her mother knitted a sweater for her before she fell ill. When she was very young, she even thought that it would be great if there were ghosts in this world. If there were ghosts, those evil people would get what they deserved. For example, that mistress, or her heartless father. He was with her mother for his career and money. He didn't deny that they once had love and swore to be together. In the end, the mistress entered the game. In order to be able to work together openly, they forced her mother to death and stole all the inheritance that her mother left for her. Why didn't such a person die? Why was the love that the mistress said so ridiculous? The most ridiculous thing was that they could be forgiven after crying a few times. Some people even felt proud of it instead of ashamed. Then, did they ever think about what would happen to those who were forced to death? What would happen to the relatives of the deceased? Should they be ignored just because they couldn't speak again? When the old lady heard Hellion Vivian's words, she wiped away the tears in her eyes and pushed Wang Ling away. Son, this lady is right. We have committed a crime and we should atone for it. After I die, go to the entrance of the alley and ask for punishment. You don't have to care about the Zhang family. Old Madame Zhang treated us so well and I've already repaid her daughter with my life. You don't have to do anything else. The Lin family only has one daughter. Old Madame Lin is old and can't walk properly. You just stay by his side and serve him. If he wants to hit you, just bear with it. This is what we should do. Mother, I understand. I understand. I'll be a good person in the future. Wang Ling cried as well. In the beginning, he didn't feel much guilt and only hoped that the other party would spare them. After all, the Zhang family was involved in this matter. But now that his mother was about to die, he truly felt remorseful. Hellion Vivian moved quickly. After listening to their discussion, the silver dagger pierced through old Madame Wang's chest. Old Lady Wang was already dead. What Hellion Wei Wei was doing now was to let everything return to dust and return to earth. Chapter 697. As if she had been corroded by something, old Lady Wang's body began to shrink rapidly. The livor mortis spots on her face also began to spread. Her fingers suddenly grew 5 times longer. Some people said that the moment a person entered the womb, their fingernails and hair would grow exponentially. Old Lady Wang's current reaction was merely making up for all the reactions she had when she died. This also meant that she had indeed become a corpse long ago. If not for the fact that Hellion Vivian's dagger had been bathed in the Buddha's light, she might not have been able to kill her. Old Lady Wang's body fell backwards, her cheeks also bulging. Waves of foul stench finally spread out at this moment. Wang Ling buried his head and cried bitterly. He had completely understood. If not for him, his mother would not have fallen to such a state. Hellion Vivian did not look at Madame Wang and her son. Instead, she looked at the black clouds above the Wang family. As expected, old Lady Wang's death caused the other 2 girls to let go of the evil in their hearts. However, Zhang Ling was someone who despised the poor and loved the rich when she was alive. She was a person who would cling to anyone who had money. Her nature was evil. No matter how much they felt, it was useless. You want us to leave just because of the old lady's death? They are fools, but I am not like them. The evil spirit seemed to be disgusted by the other two girls' retreat. She directly changed into Zhongling,'s face and desperately sucked out the darkness in her heart. Her voice was cold as she laughed. If not for this damned wife and her useless son in front of me, I would have become the young mistress of the Zhang family by now. Hellion Vivian's bright eyes were a little cold. Zhongling, if you like the second young master of the Zhang family, you can go ahead and like him. As long as you politely annul the engagement, no one will say anything about you. But you had an engagement, and you even had a tryst with the second young master of the Zhang family. Not only that, you even mocked and ridiculed the Wang family. All those innocent girls who died became your scapegoat. You're even more hateful than Wang Ling. You don't even know how to repent after death. For a person like you, even if your soul is destroyed, it won't be a pity. Zhongling seemed to have heard a funny joke. Do you think that you can control me by cutting off the grievances in the surroundings? Even if those two good-for-nothings don't say anything and let go of the grievances in their hearts, they are still one with me. You still won't dare to do anything to me, right? Who told you I can't do anything to you? As she spoke, Hellion Vivian bit her finger. The blood at the tip of her finger seemed to have a guide, slowly moving towards the dagger on the ground. Then, she clenched her fists, starting from her thumb and then to her index finger. The coldness in her eyes was almost bone-chilling. Lin, Bing, Do, Shi, Jia, Shen, Lai, Qian. As Hellion Vivian made one hand gesture after another, an invisible gas gathered behind her, emitting an unprecedented light, forming a huge golden lotus. Hellion Vivian stood under the golden lotus, her long robe fluttering, her black hair flowing freely, like a burning phoenix. Countless rays of light burst out from behind her, converging on the golden lotus, forming a huge mark. When the evil spirit saw this scene, his eyes began to shake violently. Demon-killing Buddhist incantation. You can actually use the demon-killing Buddhist incantation. Impossible, this is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The demon-killing Buddhist incantation was the only exorcism technique that could turn good into good and evil into evil. However, to be able to use the demon-killing Buddhist incantation, in addition to reaching a certain level of cultivation, one must have the bloodline of the exorcist tribe. After using the demon-killing Buddhist incantation, one would lose all of their powers within a few days. It was said that it was a Tao technique that no one in the Tsumu tribe had been able to understand. There shouldn't be anyone in this world who could use such exorcism magic. Unless they had a Buddhist affinity, but had made a contract with the devil. Otherwise, no one would be able to use it. This was because after the great battle 1,000 years ago, the demon-killing Buddhist incantation Tao technique had been lost. How could this be? How could this person use the demon-killing Buddhist incantation? Not only that, a Dharma idol actually appeared on her body. The evil spirit's eyes widened. What it regretted the most was underestimating this human in front of it. It was too late to escape. Without the wedding dress, it could no longer move. The Buddha's light emitted by the dagger had completely trapped it in this shell. Now, the rest of the girls had let go of the grievances in their hearts. After being cleansed by the Buddha's light of exorcism, they could completely reincarnate. However, it could not go anywhere. It could only let the demon-killing Buddhist incantation beat its soul into pieces. This person dragged on for so long and did not finish it off, just so that the other girls could leave. At this moment, the evil spirit realized how thoroughly it had lost. Exorcism. As Hellion Vivian uttered the last two words, a huge imprint, like the weight of Mount Tai, slowly covered Yen Lu's head. As it pressed down, it illuminated the dark clouds. The yin qi that filled the air melted like snow, disappearing into nothingness. Following a piercing scream, one could clearly see a black shadow being struck out from Yen-Lu's body by the Buddhist light. It wanted to escape. However, the black wolfhound in front of Hellion Vivian was 10 times faster than it. With a low growl, it swallowed the black shadow whole. The wolfhound chewed with all its might a few times before running to Hellion Vivian's side. It continued to stand majestically, loyal but not losing its demonic nature. Its pair of eyes were still very sharp in the dark. Not a single ghost dared to approach this place, especially after the aura of resentment was completely destroyed. They had lost the power to strengthen themselves. They sensed danger and started to retreat. However, once they lost the aura of resentment as a cover, the group of ghosts above them completely lost their shield. In less than a minute, they were all captured by the patrolling reapers. The rain stopped and turned into snow. It was so white that it seemed to be able to wash away everything. Yen-Lu opened her eyes to take a look, then fell back into a deep sleep. The infected ghosts also returned to normal. They took the opportunity to return home on a cloudy day to take a look. Some of them went to reincarnate, while some were killed by the reapers on the spot. The human world and the underworld finally returned to their normal order. The King of Hell retracted the order to close the path of reincarnation. He began to focus on searching the palace from all angles. He felt that with his intelligence, he would definitely be able to find a certain bastard in the palace. However, the honest King of Hell did not know that he was tricked by his own son. At this moment, the little King of Hell who liked to trick others was looking at Hellion Vivian with a sinister expression. He rubbed his chin with his little hand as if he was smiling. He finally knew why this woman was a variable. Demon-slaying Buddhist incantation, interesting, very interesting. Chapter 698. Master. It's the demon-slaying Buddhist incantation. The mature demon-slaying Buddhist incantation. The little one, who was originally standing on the city wall collecting resentment, was stunned as he held the gourd in his hand. He slowly turned his head and looked at Jing Wushuang, who was standing beside him. Jing Wushuang's health had always been poor, but it had never been as bad as it was now. He was wearing a pure white fur coat, and his lips were pale. He looked into the distance as if he was talking to himself. Yes, the mature demon-slaying Buddhist incantation. I didn't expect her magic to improve so quickly, Master. The little one reached out and grabbed the corner of Jing Wushuang's robe. It's okay, I'm here with you. Besides, haven't we already found Miss Ni's grave? As long as we have enough resentment and blood, she can be resurrected. In this way, we don't need Hellion Vivian's shell anymore. Once Miss Ni is resurrected, the blood of the exorcising tribe in Hellion Vivian will disappear, and the real Phoenix girl will return. When that time comes, you won't be alone anymore. Jing Wushuang coughed heavily twice. He stroked the little one's head with his fingers and nodded lightly. The corners of his mouth were slightly curved, and he was as gentle as ever. However, there was a trace of sadness in his eyes. Seeing him like this, the little one didn't say anything else. He just lowered his head and looked faintly lonely. Jing Wushuang smiled. Let's go. Let's go and prepare. There are still many things to be done if we want to resurrect the Phoenix girl. Okay. The little one nodded obediently and followed behind Jing Wushuang. The demon-slaying Buddhist incantation, the Golden Lotus Dharma, all of these reminded him of the past. At that time, he didn't have a physical body. He was just a Bodhi tree in the 9 heavens. If it wasn't for that person chanting Buddhist scriptures to him all year round and influencing the world with the intention of pardoning the world, he wouldn't have transformed into a human. Jing Wushuang closed his eyes and opened them again. There was a misty light in his eyes. Therefore, he had to bring that person back. even if he had to pay the price. He also wanted her to be reborn as a Phoenix Dharma idol. Woman, how did you master this demon-slaying Buddhist incantation? The little king of hell leaned over with his axe in hand. No matter how one looked at it, that little face of his looked extremely cunning. Hellion Vivian glanced at him casually. Is it strange? It's not strange, I just find it interesting. The little king of hell's eyes sparkled. In the past, the great demon was most afraid of people who knew this Buddhist mantra. When Hellion Vivian heard that it was related to His Highness, she immediately became interested. When was it before? A few thousand years ago. At that time, there were no countries, and the three realms weren't as distinct as they are now. The great demon king hadn't become a scourge of the demon world yet. When he was still in the human world, the person he didn't want to face the most was this person who knew the demon-killing Buddhist incantation, the little king of hell explained. Hellion Vivian flicked the horn on his head. A few thousand years ago, how old were you? At that time, I wasn't born yet. But woman, don't underestimate the power of gossip. In the next few hundred years, whenever my father was defeated by the great demon king, he would use this incident as an excuse. The little king of hell stroked his chin. So I think this incident is true. This time, Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. She just coughed softly at him. The little king of hell was talking excitedly. How could he stop so easily? He continued to talk non-stop. I heard from my father that every time the great demon king saw that person, he was like a mouse that saw a cat. He was so scared. Sigh, it's all my fault for being born at the wrong time. If I was born a few thousand years earlier, wouldn't I be able to see the great demon king's cowering appearance? Just thinking about it makes me excited. If you don't hurry up and go back to the underworld, I can make you even more excited. An indifferent voice sounded from behind the little king of hell. That perfect side profile still had a slow smile, but the light overflowing from the corner of his eyes was too cold. So much so that the little king of hell even forgot to adjust his hairstyle. With a whoosh, he disappeared into the night. Hellion Vivian was curious about the little king of hell's departure. She was really dissatisfied. She went over and asked, "Is what he said true?" Beligaju sighed and pulled her over. His voice was calm as he lectured, "I told you that the people of the underworld are stupid. In the future, you should stay away from them. But you didn't listen. Great, now you're also stupid. Hellion Vivian. You can't attack people like that. Then what's the truth? At the very least, there's no smoke without fire." Hellion Vivian said with certainty. Beligaju seemed a little lazy. "There is indeed such a person, but we've never met her." Ha! Hellion Vivian's eyes widened. Beligaju's voice was still very calm. "It's because we've never met that there are rumors that I'm afraid of her. That idiot king of hell knows how to create such things. Just listen to it and forget about it." Hellion Vivian, she didn't expect things to develop like this. What happened to the promised gossip? However, I don't think that person is an ordinary person. Beligaju raised his head and looked at her. After thinking for a while, he said, "She's quite powerful." Hellion Vivian was stunned. After all, there weren't many people who could catch the eye of His Highness. Hence, Hellion Vivian imagined many scenarios in her mind. For example, two experts who knew each other but had never met. Beligaju was already used to the person in his arms being absent-minded from time to time. He smiled helplessly and brought her out of the Wang family's courtyard. When the wooden door was opened, the Minister of Right's nerves were all tensed up. He rushed in with his stomach. Beligaju only looked at him coldly. The Minister of Rights sensibly made way for him. Then, he asked Hellion Vivian softly, "Princess Consort, how's the situation inside?" "It's settled." Hellion Vivian knew that he didn't dare to speak directly to His Highness. She thought for a while and said, other than Yen Lu, the other girls can't be saved. The bodies are in the inner room. The murderer is old lady Wang. Think about how to close the case. The murderer is really an old lady. Although he had heard the princess consort's deduction, the Minister of Rights still found it unbelievable when the truth was revealed. Hellion Vivian nodded and said, Wang Ling will tell you what happened. Later, bring some people to confiscate all of the Zhang family's assets and distribute them to the families at the entrance of the alley. Then, announce the entire process of the case to them. Other than Zhang Ling, every parent of the deceased has the right to know the truth. Yes. The Minister of Rights was already stunned. Everything that happened today was unusual. Although the princess consort didn't say anything, they all saw the ghostly aura that rushed out. Where did it go now? Who was it that settled all of this? Chapter 699. The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs asked one question after another until he finished listening to Wang Ling's narration. After a while, he asked the advisor beside him seriously, What do you think will happen if I ask the third princess consort to help us with the case? His Highness will kill you directly and confiscate your house, the advisor replied expressionlessly. If you want to die, you can try. The Secretary of State for the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs. Forget it. However, the process of the princess consort solving the case must be reported to the Golden Palace. He had a feeling that the princess consort's thoughts on the case this time would affect future scholars. Therefore, during the morning court the next day, almost everyone in the War Dragon Empire knew about the incident at the alley. In just one day, without using any connections, she solved the missing persons case that had lasted for half a month. Her meticulous thinking was amazing. There were even scholars who wrote a book about the process of Hellion Vivian solving the case for students to study seriously. The ministers who used to reject Hellion Vivian completely changed their views of Hellion Vivian because of this incident. No wonder the retired emperor agreed to the marriage between the third prince and Hellion Vivian. It turns out that the third princess consort is so amazing. I still remember when this girl was young, she was submissive to everyone. Now, it seems that we can't judge people by their impressions. Yes. Regardless of whether it was inside or outside the palace, everyone was moved and proud to have such a princess consort. However, the patriarchs of the other families had other thoughts at this time. Originally, they were not in a hurry. After all, there would be external and internal troubles to affect the situation even without them saying anything. However, now that the emperor had passed away and the third prince was ruling alone, he only married Hellion Vivian. They stayed by the retired emperor's side and helped the retired emperor so much. The third prince could get to where he was today because of their support. From their point of view, the retired emperor couldn't just throw them to the side after using them. The elder compound was no longer around and the imperial family had completely centralized power. They had to fight for a chance of survival for themselves. Otherwise, once the third prince ascended the throne, the Hellion clan would be the only one in power and receive the world's favor. They were all daughters of aristocratic families. Even if Hellion Vivian was different from the rest, their daughter was not bad either. Why should Hellion Vivian enjoy such a huge harem alone? Since the third prince's side didn't work, they would wait for the retired emperor to return. They had been married for such a long time, but there was no news of Hellion Vivian's pregnancy. It would be strange if the Emperor Emeritus wasn't worried. Even if the retired emperor wasn't in a hurry, once the third prince ascended the throne, if he didn't have an heir, he would have to have one more concubine. This was a rule passed down by the ancestors, and no one could change it. At night, in the inner court of the imperial palace, Jichong Hall, Hellion Vivian was eating her third dinner. Spacey duck wings, cold lotus root salad, and sweet and sour pork ribs were placed in a big bowl on the wooden table. Little Seven held one of the duck wings in his mouth and squatted by her feet. From time to time, he would tease the wolf dog. Seeing that the wolf dog was quite big, he had a different idea. Third sister-in-law, can I eat it? Helene Vivian choked on her water. No. Why not? Little Seven said seriously, I feel like it wants to be eaten by me. Helene Vivian's mouth twitched and she yawned lazily. That's definitely your illusion. Then I'll fatten it up first. Third brother said that it tastes better when it's fattened up. The little one's face was full of vigor as he stood up. He then took out a duck wing and fed it to the wolfhound. But what he didn't expect was that the 3 big bowls were all empty. Third sister-in-law. Where's the food? The little one looked left and right and his little eyebrows furrowed. Helene Vivian lazily nestled in the chaise lounge and pinched a grape in her hand. She casually replied, of course I ate them all. The duck wings weren't spicy enough. Next time when you steal food from the imperial kitchen, steal some chili. No, third brother will find out if I steal chili. The little one was quite distressed when he talked about this. Third sister-in-law, you've been eating too much recently. Third brother told me to supervise you and not let you eat so much at night. Otherwise, your stomach won't be able to digest it. After all, you're different from me. I can digest anything I eat. But now you're eating so much. If third brother finds out, I'll have to dance naked again. I'll be laughed at by my father-in-law and the others. Helene Vivian looked at the silly little one at her feet and was immediately amused. She reached out and picked him up. Let a foodie like you supervise me. Aren't you here to deliver food to me? I still have orange candy here. Do you want some? Third sister-in-law, you can eat. I know you're not full yet. I can go and get some goldfish later. Imperial grandfather will be back tomorrow. It'll be difficult for me to get goldfish in the future. The little one sighed heavily after he finished speaking. Helene Vivian. Are you determined to anger the retired emperor? You're the only one in the world who frets over food. However, she had been eating a lot recently. Especially when her throat was always thirsty. That kind of inexplicable thirst made it difficult for her to endure without eating, especially at night. What was going on? Helene Wei changed from her previous laziness and sat up straight. Her pair of eyes looked at the little one in her arms thoughtfully. Third sister-in-law, what's wrong? The little one's voice was very deep. Are you not full yet? If you're not full, I'll continue to steal food from the imperial kitchen. When I was stealing the duck wings just now, I found that they were steaming meat buns. They smelled very good. Do you want some? Helene Vivian listened absent-mindedly. She felt that something was not right. Could it be that her body was acting strangely because it was almost the night of the full moon? No, it couldn't be. Her reaction was not like this during the night of the last full moon. As if sensing its owner's emotions, the wolfhound raised its head and looked at Helene Vivian worriedly. Helene Vivian reached out and touched its head, frowning slightly. No matter how much she ate, she couldn't get full. Plus, she always felt lazy and didn't even want to move. Wait a minute. When was the last time her period came? Helene Vivian suddenly seemed to be enlightened. Her brain quickly calculated the time. Finally, she put down the teacup in her hand. For the first time, her usually rational and indolent face showed a blank expression. 2 months. She hadn't had her period for more than 2 months, third sister-in-law. The little one looked at her in confusion and said seriously, don't be sad. I'll go to the imperial kitchen and get the meat buns for you now. Helene Vivian pressed the little one's hand and said with a smile, no need. Help me find an imperial physician. Don't tell anyone. Chapter 700. Find an imperial physician. The little one frowned even more. Third sister-in-law, are you feeling unwell? If she was feeling unwell, he would tell his third brother right away. Helene Vivian pinched the little one's cheeks. I'm not feeling unwell. It's something else. Go and find someone. Remember what I said. Don't let anyone else know. Okay. The little one answered calmly. He ran out of the bedroom with the duck wing in his mouth. The eunuchs and palace maids standing outside were very confused. Helene Vivian stopped drinking tea. Instead, she lowered her head and touched her belly hesitantly. Was she pregnant? Helene Vivian had never thought about pregnancy. Now that she was enlightened, her first reaction was to be happy. She was really happy. She liked children very much. When she was in modern times, she wanted to adopt one. She didn't expect to get pregnant in ancient times. Whenever she thought about having a little one following behind her and calling her mommy or mommy, she felt that it was very magical. She could even imagine how His Highness would look like when he carried the little one. He would definitely lift the little one with one hand. Helene Vivian chuckled and touched her belly again. This time, she didn't feel as light as before. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a bright light. She would be able to confirm it when the imperial physician came. Little Seven was very reliable. He brought the imperial physician over in a short while. However, Little Seven didn't like to talk nonsense. The old imperial physician didn't have good hearing, so the little one didn't waste time. He directly carried the old man with one hand and carried him into the bedroom. Your Highness, Seventh Highness, quickly put me down. I can't breathe. Little Seven wasn't tall. The eunuchs and palace maids were stunned when he carried such an adult in. The old imperial physician was almost crying. He reached out and covered his face. The little one was very domineering. Be quiet. If third brother hears you, you're dead. No other men are allowed in the bedroom. The old imperial physician was speechless. Then why did you carry me in? You're trying to kill me. Little Seven, put Dr. Liu down first. Helene Vivian heard the noise and came out of the inner room. She saw the little one carrying an old man with one hand. It was a funny scene. The little one always obeyed Helene Vivian. He put Imperial Physician Liu on the ground with a serious face. Imperial Physician Liu was finally saved. Gasping for breath, he greeted Helene Vivian. This old official greets the third princess consort. Get up. Helene Vivian chuckled and said, Little Seven has always liked to joke with the elderly. It's been hard on you, Dr. Liu. Imperial Physician Liu quickly waved his hand and shook his head. You're too kind, little seventh prince, you're a straightforward person. It's not hard for me at all. As if. Even if it was a deity, he would still lose half of his life because of him. Have a seat, Dr. Liu. I asked Little Seven to find an imperial physician. As smart as Helene Vivian was, how could she not understand the meaning of the imperial physician's words? She also knew that he had no ill intentions. This old imperial physician was one of the retired emperor's people. He used to be in the martial arts world. Like Eunuch's son, although he liked to talk about Little Seven, he really liked her. Therefore, she had always been polite to these old people. Imperial Physician Liu had always felt comfortable with Helene Vivian's intelligence. Since he learned about the incident at the alley, he admired the third princess consort even more. Now that he heard that it was Helene Vivian who asked him to come, he hurriedly asked, Third princess consort, where are you feeling unwell? It's not that I'm feeling unwell. Helene Vivian stretched out her hand and smiled faintly. I just want to ask you to feel my pulse. Hearing this, Imperial Physician Lu paused for a moment. Then, he seemed to think of something and a trace of surprise flashed across his face. He was an old Imperial physician who stayed in the palace. Just by hearing Helene Vivian's words, he had some guesses in his heart. Soon, he sat down. He even ignored his uncomfortable stomach and stretched out his hand to feel Helene Vivian's pulse. In less than 10 seconds, Imperial Physician Lu looked up excitedly. Congratulations, Princess Consort. This is a pregnancy pulse. The little one who was stuffing something into his mouth suddenly opened his mouth wide when he heard Imperial Physician Lu's words. He looked at Helene Vivian's stomach and then looked at the thing in his hand. He was completely stunned. Helene Vivian had just guessed that she was pregnant. But guessing was one thing, and hearing the confirmation from the old Imperial physician was another. She wondered what kind of expression His Highness would have when he heard this news. Ha! Helene Vivian couldn't help but have a trace of expectation in her heart. That man was usually too elegant. She had never seen him lose his composure. He was obviously very arrogant when he was young. Helene Vivian thought of the soul fragments she had encountered before and smiled even more. She wondered who the child would take after. Would it be more like him? Or more like her? It would be better to take after His Highness's appearance. No matter if it was a boy or a girl, as long as they had His Highness's appearance, they would be devastatingly beautiful. If it was a boy, he would be able to marry a fair, rich, and beautiful woman in the future and reach the pinnacle of life. It would be better not to take after His Highness's temper. His character of locking people up for no reason was really a headache. He. If the royal family and the retired emperor knew about this, they would be very happy. Imperial Physician Lu couldn't help but laugh. This is a great thing. Helene Vivian couldn't hide the happiness on her face. But even so, she was still very careful. Imperial Physician Lu, no one knows why you came to me. I asked Little Seven to meet you alone because I didn't want to make it public. Now the royal family is not in the palace. They are outside the city to meet the retired emperor. Let's wait for the news until tomorrow. Do you understand what I mean, Imperial Physician Lu? I understand. I understand what you mean. Hearing this, Imperial Physician Lu's voice immediately changed. Even his attitude was much more respectful. He cupped his hands and said, "Don't worry, Princess. If someone asks me, I will say that His Highness played a trick on me." Helene Vivian smiled. Imperial Physician Lu is so thoughtful. Imperial Physician Lu was really embarrassed when he heard this. Before leaving the palace, His Highness specially told him to take care of the princess. Just now, he was so happy that he forgot that the palace was not as peaceful as it looked on the surface. As long as a new emperor was not appointed, those with ulterior motives would not give up on their own ideas. There was nothing wrong in Jiucheng Hall because His Highness had cleaned it up. But it was hard to say how many spies there were in the palace. Once someone knew that the princess was pregnant, it was inevitable that they would have other ideas. I will go back now to avoid suspicion. After thinking it through, Imperial Physician Lu immediately stood up. Chapter 701. Helene Vivian knew that he was doing this for her own good, so she nodded with a smile. Imperial Physician Lu gave a few more instructions. It was nothing more than what a pregnant woman should pay attention to in terms of food. It would be best if she didn't eat anything tonight. When the retired emperor and Her Highness returned the next morning, he would inform the imperial kitchen to prepare a medicinal diet for her. The little one listened attentively at the side. He stood beside Helene Vivian's feet and nodded at every word that Imperial Physician Lu said. After Imperial Physician Lu left, the little one threw all the food he stole from the imperial kitchen outside. He only had one of his favorite meat buns in his mouth. Then, he raised his little head and stopped Helene Vivian from collapsing. Third sister-in-law, Imperial Physician Lu just said that you can't eat anything else. You can only drink water and eat apples. Indeed, Helene Wei Wei would get hungry very quickly. The apple would not last long, but it was better to listen to the Imperial Physician's advice. Besides, there were too many people in Juchong Hall, so only the food stolen by Little Seven was the safest option. As for the rest, she would have to go through layers of inspections, which was troublesome enough. However, her stomach still felt very empty. Helene Vivian did not know if it was an illusion. She felt that the more time passed, the more she liked to eat. Although she had been able to eat a lot during this period of time, her appetite had obviously increased yesterday and today. There are still strawberries in the space. Xiao Bai's wise voice sounded, those strawberries have spiritual energy. It's good for the little master to eat them. Helene Wei Wei nodded and agreed with Little White's words. The longer the strawberry grew in the fantasy space, the greater the spiritual aura of the strawberry would be. Whether it was for the child or herself, it was a great tonic. Helene Vivian thought of this and sat up straight without hesitation. Her consciousness jumped into the fantasy space, plucked a handful of strawberries, and ate to her heart's content. Xiao Bai did not expect her to eat so much. He turned into a cat and jumped onto Helene Vivian's left shoulder. In the blink of an eye, Helene Vivian had returned to reality. The sweetness in her mouth was still there, and her whole body seemed to be filled with strength. This way, she wouldn't be hungry for a while. Third sister-in-law, is there really a baby here? Why isn't your stomach bulging? Seeing that there was no one around, the little one leaned against Helene Wei Wei's stomach and asked with bright eyes. Helene Vivian knew that she was pregnant and could not carry Xiao Qi anymore. She pulled the little one's hand and put it on her belly. She laughed and said, "It's not the time for your belly to bulge. When will the baby come out?" After the little one finished speaking, he shook his head. "No, it should be little master. When the time comes, the evil aura on my body will disappear. I can transform into the sky-devouring Dharma idol and carry him to Sea Region City to catch dragons to eat. The dragons there are the most delicious. Little master will definitely like it." Helene Vivian rubbed the little one's head and smiled. "Does Xiao Qi like babies too?" "Yes." The little one looked serious. "I like anything smaller than me." Helene Vivian, what a simple reason. She was speechless. Little Seventh Prince was very excited. He directly talked to Helene Vivian's stomach. "Little master, do you like dragons? If you like them, you can't go now. I'll knock the green dragon out and bring it here for you to see." The green dragon, who was following behind Beligaju outside the city, sneezed heavily. "What's going on?" It was very rare for a dragon to sneeze. There might be strong winds and heavy snow later. The fire Qilin, who was leisurely pacing and admiring his strong body, glanced at the green dragon. That gaze was a little strange. The green dragon became even more irritable after being stared at by the fire Qilin. The culprit was still talking to Helene Vivian's stomach. They were seriously and strictly discussing how to make the green dragon into a delicious dish. Helene Vivian leaned lazily on the bed and listened. Even the air was filled with a warm smell. That night, the little one didn't leave. He didn't go to bed either. He only asked Little Black and Little White, a dog and a cat, to protect Helene Vivian on both sides. One was to defend against magical beasts, and the other was to defend against evil ghosts. He meditated in the most important position. He seemed to be asleep, but in fact, he could quickly open his eyes if there was even the slightest movement. The heavy resentment in the palace had been there for a long time. Even if it wasn't because someone wanted to break the seal, it was because of the strong resentment. This resentment was not good for pregnant women. After all, too many children died in the palace. Every one of them became ghosts before they were born. So at this time, how to protect Helene Vivian became the most important thing for the little one. However, he didn't know. Because of the baby in Helene Vivian's stomach, all the resentful babies in the palace were trembling in fear. They didn't dare to go near Juchong Hall at all. Knowing that a person was about to be born in the palace, the resentful babies fled to the cold palace, which was the furthest away from Juchong Hall. They wanted to be as far away from that unsettling aura as possible. Hey, what do you think is going to be born this time? Why are my limbs so weak? I can't even move. So what if your limbs are weak? You don't know, but I was almost swallowed by that thing when I passed by Juchong Hall today. What? Then shouldn't we stay away from Juchong Hall in the future? That thing isn't that powerful in the day, but we can't come out during the day. Sigh, it seems like we can't reincarnate this time. Why are you still thinking about reincarnation? Do you think you can kill it? It can devour ghosts. Scary. Too scary. I've decided that I don't want to stay in the palace anymore. I want to find a new place to develop. Eighth brother, I'll go with you. He, an inexplicable evil laugh sounded from behind them. The resentful babies froze and waved at their departing companions. Little 9, little 10, wait for us. Wait for us. The next day, the air in the palace was much better than before. Even the cold palace, which was usually gloomy, seemed to be more lively. When the palace maids and eunuchs saw this, they found it strange. It was the same month, but why was the gloomy atmosphere in the cold palace so much less? Was it because the retired emperor was coming back? The weather was really good. The palace looked like it had been cleansed by something. Even the sky and earth seemed to be vast. The retired emperor was very satisfied with this, and the pain of losing his son was much less. He looked at the endless palace and nodded with his hands behind his back. On the contrary, Bailey Jiaju, who had a cold expression, paused the moment he stepped through the palace gates. His eyes, which were as deep as a pool of water, flashed a trace of light. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.